Hello, hi, I'm Giovanni Hall Art, and today we're going to be finishing up this drawing of Squirrel Girl, so fan I'm doing. The next fan art I'm going to do for Marvel's Rival will be Invisible Woman, aka Susan Storm. And just going to be chilling, watching some YouTube videos as I'm drawing, and just slowly finish this up. Alright, let's have a good one. Let's get into it. Alright. Let's go play this YouTube video.
At 6'7", 269 pounds, do you think, was it Mutu? Is that how you pronounce his name, Mutu? Mutu could beat LeBron in a game to 21. Well, he's shorter than LeBron, but he weighs more. Well, it says here, abilities, pressure, unnerved, hidden ability. All right, so he's got composure, psychic, yeah. He can anticipate moves and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe he could pull it off.
Maybe? What do you mean, maybe? The people need answers. Where's your journalistic integrity, Stephen? Fine. If you won't figure it out, I will. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's dropping dimes and breaking ankles. Yeah, I barely understood what I said either. But I had to brush up on the old sports vocab because just a few weeks ago, we were treated to an incredibly meme-ish moment from sports analyst Stephen A. Smith. At the end of his show, the Stephen A. Smith Show, he typically shifts gears from talking about sports to answering fan questions from Twitter about literally anything. This has varied wildly, from who would your starting five pick be from the Sesame Street.
First of all, my start five, Cookie Monster.
What kind of bender would you be?
You know what? When I watch Aquaman, I think water.
Or who you think the best SpongeBob athlete is.
Now, SpongeBob with the big square head, I gotta consider that, because I always wish I had a big square head.
It's pretty random and it's kind of hilarious to watch him stumble his way through pop culture references.
Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't seen much of SpongeBob. Damn it.
But one of them stood out above all the rest. Someone asked Stephen who would win in a 1v1 game of basketball, LeBron James or Mewtwo. That's right, the Pokemon. People lost their minds over this, mainly because of how he said the name Mewtwo.
Mewtwo?
I never thought of Mewtwo as a cow before, but now that I have, I can't unthink it. Of course, the discussion raged on Twitter. Could LeBron James actually stand up to the likes of Mewtwo? Surely it's a one-sided fight, right? We all saw what happened the last time a human went toe-to-toe with Mewtwo. The Pokemon fan in me, along with the rest of the internet, thought this was an open and shut case. But the theorist in me knew I couldn't leave this up to a hypothetical. I mean, LeBron is arguably one of the greatest basketball players of all time. I may have been the kid in high school being bullied by the jocks, but I actually enjoyed basketball. Less the playing part and more the learning the rules and regulations part. Yeah, I was a nerd, what did you expect? But I can't imagine that a lot of Mewtwo's movesets would be legal in an actual game of basketball. Plus, I think we forget that LeBron is more than just a man. While Mewtwo has appeared in dozens of games, movies, and episodes of the show, LeBron has also made appearances in over 38 NBA video games, a number of movies and TV shows, and a few other mediums that all offer their own unique styles and powers that might just help level the playing field. So get out your rulebooks, theorists, because we are going to answer the question that Stephen A. Smith couldn't. We are going to go through everything to see who would win in a game of basketball. Legendary NBA player LeBron James or legendary psychic Pokemon Mewtwo. Ladies and gentlemen, it's game on. As I've already mentioned it, let's start with some basic rules before we really get into this. Obviously, groups like the NBA, NCAA, and the International Basketball Federation, or FIBA, have never had to account for psychic powers before. So we're going to be doing our best to interpret the rules as fairly as possible in a way that keeps things fun, but also means the spirit of the game remains somewhat intact. For example, Mewtwo could use his psychic powers to just hold LeBron in place and have free reign over the court. Now, there isn't technically a rule against that, but there is a rule that says a player shall not hold, push, charge into, or impede the progress of an opponent. Typically, this applies to physical contact, but I think it would be safe to say that regardless of how you hold the player, it's still impeding their progress and breaks the spirit of the game. Therefore, this won't be allowed. Similarly, there's a rule about doing something that is considered, quote, detrimental to the game, which is basically the ref's airbud clause. Just because it's not in the rules doesn't mean it's okay to do. So if Mewtwo tried busting out some of his powers powers that we see from Pokemon the first movie, like mind controlling LeBron or erasing his memory of basketball, that would likely fall into this category. Not exactly good sportsmanship to make it so your opponent can't even face you properly. Other rules, however, require a lot less interpretation. The NBA has policies against surpassing your natural ability thanks to synthetic substances, or as most people call them, PEDs. So I don't think Mewtwo taking those weird TM, HM disc things and learning a new move from them is gonna fly either. With that out of the way, let's dive into the specifics of how a human might win a game of basketball against a psychic cat. The most important factor when it comes to winning a game of basketball is, of course, your ability to score. And how you can achieve that can be broken down into a few key areas, starting with the most obvious one, height. When you have another player trying to block your shots, having a few extra inches makes it that much easier to make it over them. Conversely, being taller also makes it easier to block your opposing shots. And as Steven pointed out,
He's shorter than LeBron, but he weighs more.
LeBron is 2 inches taller than Mewtwo, so there you have it, case closed. Kinda. Because you see, height is actually only part of the equation. You're not shooting from your head after all, but your arms. The bigger your wingspan is, the higher you can reach to block or shoot. According to Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, your wingspan should be the same as your height. But fun fact, that's not how humans work. I had to get measured for a shoot once, and it turns out my wingspan is actually 3 inches shorter than my height. So while I'm by no means short, I do technically have short arms. And it turns out LeBron also has the same issue, just in the other direction. He's 6'9", but he's gained an extra 3 inches in his wingspan, making it a whole 7 feet. Mewtwo, on the other hand, looks lanky, but actually is pretty average in that department. By taking Mewtwo's 3D model from one of the games and posing him to assert dominance, you can see that he fits neatly into a perfect square. That means that his wingspan is exactly the same as his height, 6'7", which is impressive, but not compared to LeBron's 7-foot wingspan. But Mewtwo has one final trick up his sleeve. He can Mega Evolve. Mega Mewtwo X specifically gains an entire foot of height, and it gives him an infinite wingspan, as, according to his Pokedex entry,
Its psychic power has augmented its muscles.
which we then see in Pokken leads to limbs that can stretch infinitely. However, that's not gonna fly here, as in order to Mega Evolve, Mewtwo has to be holding the Mewtwo Knight X item. And FIBA has a very specific rule about that. Quote, any equipment that is designed to increase a player's height or reach, or in any other way give an unfair advantage, is not permitted. The Mewtwo Knight would be considered such an item, literally making him taller and longer, and therefore is going to be disallowed from play. At this point, I was starting to think LeBron might actually stand a chance. A lot of Mewtwo's powers have been disallowed, and he doesn't have the height or wingspan to keep up. But sadly, it's all downhill from here for LeBron. Remember, wingspan and height matter for the same reason. You want to be able to reach up and block shots, and to shoot over the opponent, or just reach the basket directly. But there's another element that can add to your height that is less physical. Vertical leap, or how high you can jump. And boy, oh boy, does Mewtwo clean up in this department. In Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's training arena, you can see that the top of Mewtwo's head goes from 2 meters to 4.8 meters in a single jump. That's a vertical leap of 2.8 meters, or 9 feet and 2 inches. He would be able to clear LeBron easily and still have space to go, because LeBron only has a vertical jump height of 1.1 meters, or 3 feet and 8 inches, which is impressive by human standards. It's about a foot taller than the league average, but he ain't getting over Mewtwo or blocking any shots with that. Or is he? See, this is where LeBron's extracurricular activities come into play, and the first thing I turned to was his starring role in Space Jam 2. Now, I'd never seen Space Jam 2, but Michael Jordan got some pretty cool stretch powers in the first one, and that would be a huge advantage here. So I sat down and I watched the whole thing, and man, does this movie suck.
Wait.
I could do a whole video just complaining about it, but the most frustrating thing besides LeBron's acting is LeBron doesn't even get any powers. He only gets boosts from the core, and his son gets a bunch of powers, but he doesn't get any, which is a complete letdown. But don't worry, from the ashes of Space Jam 2, there would rise a phoenix that would bring me hope. Warner Brothers smash clone multiverses. Okay, maybe Phoenix was a bit strong. The game is fine, I guess. More like a scorched chicken. But LeBron is a playable character, so we gotta try. I analyzed some of his jumps in the game, and using pixel measurements, we can conclude that his vertical leap is around 8 foot 4 inches, which is nothing to snuff at, though it still fails to match up to Mewtwo's 9 9'2". And it gets worse when you consider that in basically every TV or movie appearance, Mewtwo can just levitate. It's basically just an infinite extension of his jump, going as high or as far as he wants to get over LeBron and position himself perfectly next to the net. You can't get a travel violation if your feet don't touch the ground. But to top it all off, Mewtwo doesn't even need to jump or levitate to win here, because it's time to talk about the thing that I know you've all been screaming at me this entire time: his psychic powers. Those give him the biggest advantage of all: perfect accuracy. He can throw the ball from anywhere on the court and just manipulate it to go exactly where he wants it to, while LeBron only has a 59.9 effective field goal percentage, meaning he's missing 40% of his shots. Is there any way he could improve those odds besides, just getting good? Turns out, yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, LeBron has been in dozens of NBA titles, and one of them broke away from the realism and gave you power-ups to fix this exact problem. The game is called NBA Playgrounds, and in it, you can activate powers known as lottery picks, one of which is called Electric Ball. This power-up makes your next shot unmissable, and it cannot be blocked. So even with Mewtwo's height, levitation, and psychic abilities, he's not going to be able to stop LeBron. If LeBron is able to get this power-up, that is. Not only are lottery picks randomized, but their randomization is actually weighted, with Electric Ball being more likely to go to those already winning the game. Given LeBron's lack in every area compared to Mewtwo so far, he definitely isn't. Plus, you build up your lottery pick bar by doing things like dunking, which LeBron also isn't going to be able to do without the power-up. Mewtwo can just perfectly block every shot. Okay, so things are looking pretty bad for LeBron here, but he isn't completely defenseless.
You mastered your mind.
All right, we're gonna keep going.
But great. In multiverses, it's a different story. When he doesn't have the ball, his down triangle attack called Denied changes to create a fence behind him that can perfectly block incoming projectiles. Now, as we've shown, he doesn't have the height or wingspan to get in front of the ball as it's being shot, but he does have enough height, wingspan, and leap to get in front of the basket, which are only 10 feet off the ground. Therefore, he could just jump up and block the ball from going in at the last minute. Now, if you're a fan of basketball, at this point you're probably yelling at me that this tactic wouldn't work, as blocking the ball that is in, quote, downward flight towards the basket would be considered goaltending, and you'd be right. But there is an exception, and that's if an offensive player is dunking the ball. So long as the ball hasn't left their hand, it's not considered in downward flight, and therefore you can use your hand to block the ball. And if Mewtwo's psychic powers are considered breaking the rules of holding a player, which is normally associated with physical contact, then Mewtwo using psychic powers to hold and guide the ball also count as physical contact, which means that even if Mewtwo is shooting from the other side of the court, it would still be considered a dunk because the ball never entered downward flight. It's still being held by the player. Now, I'm not saying Mewtwo can't use those powers, it just means that if he does, it would allow LeBron to jump up and block the ball with his denied attack without receiving a penalty. And the best part is, if LeBron does successfully block Mewtwo's shot with that power, in the game he immediately gains possession of the ball. Possession is actually the second major part of winning at basketball. The more you have the ball, the more opportunities you have to shoot. Sure, we've established that shooting is going to be a challenge with Mewtwo's jumping advantages, but if he can keep the ball away from Mewtwo, then he might be able to figure something out, right? Well, I thought so too, but the issue arises that LeBron can't just hold on to the ball forever. He's either going to have to start dribbling to get closer to the basket, or take a shot at some point, and in both instances, he's going to have to let go of the ball, which gives Mewtwo the chance to use his speed, strength, and psychic powers to steal the ball and immediately go for another shot. Though, if Mewtwo didn't want to wait for LeBron, he could always do what Steven suggested.
That long tail, you never know. Might strip him.
Stripping the ball is just when a defensive player knocks the ball out of the offensive player's hand, and LeBron isn't used to defending against a third appendage. All of these options lead to Mewtwo once again psychically dunking, LeBron denying, and the cycle repeating over and over again until the heat death of the universe, or until LeBron gets too tired and Mewtwo manages to score some baskets. Basically, no matter what way you slice it, LeBron is not winning this match. The internet was right, and I was ready to give up. There's just no way the king is coming back from this. I'd watched every cameo appearance he ever did on TV. Nothing. I watched gameplay from every NBA video game there is to look for power-ups and scoring bonuses. Nada. I even checked all the random mobile games he's in, including the Pokemon Go clone NBA All World. Huh, a second Nintendo clone featuring LeBron. Weird. Oh, and now I have 2 nickels. Regardless, I had 0 to work with. Every appearance was boring, played for laughs, and gave him no powers, which is especially disappointing when he cameos in shows like Teen Titans, which are about superheroes. And that's when it hit me. Where's the one place we'd expect someone to have superhuman abilities more than anywhere else? Comics. They do collaborations with other media entities all the time, and LeBron is no exception. He's got a DC comic and 2 Marvel comic appearances, and one of them completely flips the tables on Mewtwo. It's called LeBron King of the Rings, and it's all about LeBron's hypothetical rise to gaining the 7 championship rings that he declared.
Sorry, I didn't
win.
see a
It's
chat there.
honestly a lot
Anyways,
of fun
goddamn.
because the creators are basically just making jabs at his ego. But it all adds up to LeBron getting some insane powers. For starters, LeBron can levitate.
I've been
That's
making
right,
Squirrel
he
Girl
apparently
fan art.
spent some time with some
Welcome
street
to the
magicians,
chat.
and instead of getting scammed out of his millions, he learns to fly, meaning he's going toe-to-toe with Mewtwo. The sky is quite literally the limit. Suddenly, LeBron can use his deny attack on any shot from any height, and he doesn't have to risk the potential goaltending strategy. Although, here you might think that this is where LeBron falls into the same issues as before. Mewtwo will steal the ball back when he lets go, and we'll end up in a continuous loop again, but oh no. Because, and I can't believe I'm saying this, LeBron can also turn invisible.
Prevent tough residues with the power of finished jet drive.
This is really good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm just finishing up this artwork. And just watching some YouTube. Chilling.
Getting around players during a game, which means it's unlikely we're getting the Invisible Woman powers from
Thank
the
you.
2005
I appreciate
movie
that.
where she can only turn herself invisible but not her clothes. It would be a pretty useless strategy if we could still see LeBron's uniform and the ball while he's holding it. Instead, it seems like these powers reflect the actual Marvel comic version of Invisible Woman, where in 1964, she was given the ability to turn objects around her invisible too. So just remember, kids, the movie can never be as good as the original. Anyway, this level of power would allow LeBron to turn himself and the ball invisible. Mewtwo won't be able to see him or aim any kind of psychic power at him. It's pretty hard to focus your energy on moving a ball you can't see. And yes, while Mewtwo has telepathy, movies like Detective Pikachu show that he's able to be snuck up on and captured, so he's not super aware of things that he can't see. LeBron can just do his multiverses block, get hold of the ball, turn invisible, levitate towards the basket, and dunk. But would invisibility even be allowed? Well, the NBA and the comic didn't seem to mind, and even if they did, Mewtwo or the ref would have to catch LeBron doing it, which is going to be pretty hard because LeBron has one final trick up his sleeve. He can create decoys. It's not fully explained how he does this, but we do know there is a move that does the same thing in the Pokemon games. Substitute. Quote, the user makes a copy of itself using some of its HP. The copy serves as the user's decoy. And despite Mewtwo being one of the most intelligent
Can't wait for the
powerful
finished
Pokemon
product.
in the games,
Thank you
he
so
is
much.
not
Appreciate
immune to
that.
this diversion.
Yeah, I can't wait to finish
100%
posting it.
of his attacks will
Post it.
go
It's gonna be
towards
awesome.
the decoy. LeBron can set a decoy and then increase his evasiveness to max level by going
Sorry if I
invisible,
read your
making
chats
it
late.
impossible for Mewtwo to correctly
I'm looking at my
identify
drawing
and
screen.
target his opponent. Which means, after many days of deep diving, I have done it. I have answered the question of who would win in a game of basketball, LeBron James or Mewtwo. And in a surprising turn of events, the answer is actually LeBron. So long as you're letting LeBron use all of his powers from across the various games and comics that he's been involved in. Mewtwo would just be too busy aiming at a decoy or trying to figure
I don't
out
know if I
where
like this
LeBron is
hand.
before he could even try and dunk the ball. And here's the thing, this comic is from 2012. It's 12 years old, and yet it's the most fun and interesting piece of non-sports media that LeBron has been a part of. What happened? Why is every power you get so boring, if you even get powers at all? Like, my guy, you were a producer on Space Jam. Couldn't you have given yourself the powers rather than your kid? All I'm saying is maybe for your next project, let the creators have some fun. Let them give you the wacky powers, make you look a little bit silly, because that's what makes these kinds of debates fun. Heck, it would have at least made Space Jam a little bit more enjoyable. Then, the next time Stephen A. Smith puts you up against some impossible fictional creature, it won't require someone like me bending over backwards to prove that you really are the king, regardless of who you're up against. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. And if you want another
You
crazy
know what?
episode
I'm
nobody
gonna
expected,
get
check out
Marvel's
this
Rival
video
now.
where I solved
Yeah,
the
you should get it. It's a
Minecraft
very
from
good game.
difficult game about climbing. Welcome to the Madhouse Theorists.
I would play it, but right now I gotta finish.
Pokemon sizes make absolutely
Let's try.
zero sense. The fearsome Charizard, yeah, it stands at a measly 5 foot 7 inches, as a couple inches shorter than me. The formidable Lucario, he's just 3 foot 11. It's not even tall enough to get on most Disney rides. And Furret, you know, the Pokemon that's based on a ferret, is supposedly 6 feet long. Not sure I want that thing running up and down my pant leg. Anyway, I think you get the point. The sizes listed in the Pokedex are all over the place, but there's one Pokemon that takes the insanity and turns it up to 11. The float whale Pokemon Wailord. For
this hand looks
2
weird.
decades, this guy has sparked fan rage. So much so that it's even spilled into the realm of a full-on academic paper. And all of it stems from one simple question. Is Wailord lighter than air? Seems like a weird thing to be asking about your 47-foot-long whale, right? Wrong. Once you look at the rest of the numbers, you see how this has become one of the most controversial topics in all the Pokeverse. So today we're gonna be coming up with a definitive answer. Has the internet hit rock bottom, or is everyone else, including this Pokemon, full of hot air? Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where today we're going back to our roots, applying real-world research to fictional worlds. Break out the Pixel Rulers, class, because today we're overanalyzing the disturbing science of Pokemon. And no, I am not talking about how a tiny Skitty and a giant Wailord are meant to breed. Not touching that one with a 10-foot Alolan Executor. At least, not yet. Maybe one day. Nope, today I'm
No,
talking about
that's
the fact
crazy.
that Wailord is light.
Who's your
Like,
best character in my
stupidly
opinion?
light. As I mentioned in the cold open,
My best
Wailord's
character
Pokedex entries confused
will probably
fans
be,
since it was first introduced in Gen
right
3.
now
You
it's,
see, Wailord's weight is listed at
Star-Lord.
877.4 pounds, or about 398 kilograms. That's no doubt heavy, one of the heaviest Pokemon in the entire series, but it is comically
Star-Lord,
light
he's like
when
my
you
main
compare it
right
to your
now.
typical whale. Blue whales, the thing that
I
Wailord
started
is based
using
on,
Invisible
usually
Woman.
weighs somewhere between 290 and 330,000 pounds, or between 130 and 150,000 kilos. Practically 350 times the weight of your standard Wailord. So
I
these
want a
guys are
PC so
heavy,
bad, but the only
not
computer I
too
have
heavy,
is a
you know?
desktop.
However, where
They
things
can't
get
run stream.
controversial is
Yeah,
when
that
you
sucks
factor in
sometimes.
Wailord's other measurements. Wailord's
You just have to
quote-unquote height
work with what
is
you
listed at
can.
47 feet, or 14.5 meters. He's massively big for not a lot of weight, prompting many
Yeah,
fans online
for
to
I have my
speculate
PC,
that Wailord may in fact be the
I
lightest
just save up
Pokemon
for
in
it.
all the games relative to his size. Some have even gone
It's a
so far as to
long
say
minute.
that Wailord is so light, he's literally lighter than air. The argument's been so heated, in fact, that it eventually spawned a real research paper from a real university in the UK. And their conclusion? Yep, Wailord
no.
is, in fact, lighter than air. Strap a string on that guy, you got yourself a big old whale balloon. Reddit, though, they weren't buying it, because, of course, they weren't. It's Reddit. This prompted a massive post arguing the exact opposite, that no, Wailord is not lighter than air. So today, loyal theorists, we're gonna be putting an end to this seismic debate. We're crunching the numbers ourselves to see who was right, who was wrong, and who was super nerdy. It
We're
was
gonna do
all of
that.
us. All of us were super nerdy. Will Wailord be sailing the seven seas, or floating amongst the clouds like a Thanksgiving Day parade balloon? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Morty time.
Leave your theories in the comments below. I'll
Oh,
pick my
I accidentally cropped
in
it.
the next episode of Morty.
So, how does one go
We're
about
back,
proving
we're
whether
back,
a
we're back.
fictitious whale is able to float through the air? Well, it all comes down to a little scientific principle called density. Density is the measure of how much mass something has per unit of volume. If we have ourselves two cubes of equal volume, one made of lead
We should
and
be
the
good
other made of
now.
wood, the cube of lead would weigh more and thus be more dense. If I then drop that cube of lead into a fluid that's less
I
dense
missed the
than
game
it, say
theories.
water, the cube will
Well,
sink to the
map
bottom.
pack.
If I drop the cube of wood into the water, meanwhile, it would float since wood is less dense than water. It's all pretty self-explanatory stuff. It's also pretty darn easy to calculate.
Where's
All
that
you need to do
level
is
I
divide the
had?
mass by the volume and bam, you've got
Okay, there
yourself
we
the
go.
density. Classic equation, D equals M over V, DMV. The one place where dreams go to die. So let's just take ourselves an easy example here to get warmed up. Voltorb. Voltorb is a nice round sphere, so figuring out its volume should be quick. According to the Pokedex, Voltorb has
Yeah,
a
we're
height
good, though.
of
We're good, we're
0.5
good.
meters or 1 foot 8 inches. Its radius is half that, so 0.25 meters. And the formula for the volume of a sphere is V equals 4/3 pi r cubed. So plug it in our values, you get a volume of 0.065 cubic meters. Now, all you need to do to figure out Voltorb's density is take that listed mass of 10.4 kilograms and divide it by the volume that we just got
I think
to
this
get a
hand looks
density of
better.
160 kilograms per cubic meter. Comparing that to the density of air, which is 1.293 kilograms per cubic meter, we can see that Voltorb is definitely not floating away on the breeze. But the density of water, it's actually much higher, 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter. So Voltorb would actually float on the water, despite him being a giant metal ball, which means in real life, you'd probably be able to teach your Voltorb how to use surf. That being said, this is all pretty easy math, right? Here's the problem with Wailord, though. Unlike Voltorb, who's a perfectly shaped sphere, Wailord is a limp-shaped whale.
Well, you know,
Finding
you've
its
been doing it
volume
for
is
so
not as
long,
easy of a
you probably want
plug-and-chug
to try
solution.
different things
So
in
let's
life.
just take a look
Can't
at how
blame a
both
man for
sides
that.
of this poke puzzle tried to solve the problem. First, there's
Dedicated
this
so much
paper
of his
written
life.
by William Farmer, a student at the
It's like,
University of
try
Leicester,
different
who wrote an
different,
undergraduate research paper in the
endeavors.
school's Journal of Interdisciplinary Science Topics. I gotta say, love the fact that this debate's been going on for so long that the
I actually
kids who
discovered
used
his
to argue
channel.
about it on the playground
I
are
heard
now
about his
old
channel
enough
like a
to
long
write their
time
own
before.
published research
I actually
papers
started
about
watching
it. Truly,
consistently,
William Farmer, you are a man
probably
after my
4
own
years
heart. So
ago.
looking for a job, feel free to apply for Theorist's
It's like
Strip
part of my
Writer.
daily
Anyway,
routine.
he calculated
Adventures start with a hybrid you can depend on. But where there
Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to the chat. I'm streaming on 3 platforms: Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok.
base shape, claiming that the overestimates here, these empty parts where the cylinder is bigger than the body, those would help account for the parts that stick out like his tail and his fins. The volume of a cylinder amounts to pi r squared h, so pi times the radius of the cylinder multiplied by the cylinder's height. So with a Wailord cylinder height of 14.5 meters and a radius of 2.855 meters, he figured out that Wailord's volume would be around 370 cubic meters, making the density 1.08 kilograms per cubic meter, which is lighter than air at 1.293. So, case closed, right? No. You see, despite this coming from an academic journal, the paper makes a lot of assumptions about Wailord's shape and volume, and this got Reddit eager for a more precise solution. This post comes from the R Pokemon subreddit by user PetscottMiju, who also used pixel measurements, but this time refined Wailord's estimated shape. Instead of just reducing him down to a simple cylinder, they instead decided to add a hemisphere to each end of the shape. That way, they didn't need to explain away as much empty space. They also recognized that pixel measurements tend to be slightly inconsistent across different games, and so they tried to correct for that as well. This led their estimate for Wailord's radius to be smaller, 2.2 meters as opposed to 2.8. Their cylinder length then
They're so
was 8
technical.
meters, leaving about 2.1 meters
My
on each
Twitch
end
is the
for
same
tail.
as my
And in
YouTube name.
total, this refined equation where they
Giovanni
added up the
Hall
volume
are
of the
all the
cylinder
same.
and 2
On
hemispheres
TikTok,
gave them a
Twitch, and YouTube.
significantly smaller
If you actually
volume,
look in the
only
bio,
166.24 cubic meters, less than half what the academic paper had
if
proposed.
you look in the
Divide
bio,
Wailord's
you can
mass of
see
398 kilos by 166,
the links
and you
to
get
all my social media
2.39
accounts, my
kilograms
link
per
tree.
cubic meter, which is nearly double the density of air. And a
I was planning on
vastly
watching
different
some One
conclusion
Piece,
than
but I feel like when I watch stuff online and stream, if it's like something was copyrighted, heavy like One Piece, all my videos would get taken down. Because I was gonna watch in the background, but wouldn't be able to play the audio. I just feel like you stream like YouTube stuff, depending on what it is, you have a little bit of leeway. But honestly, you can't like stream someone's YouTube video. But I think the audio is okay if you're doing something else.
the academic paper. With numbers like that, your float whale Pokemon here, he ain't floating anywhere. So which is
Yeah, I want
right?
to catch up on
Well,
One Piece.
off the bat, the Reddit approach seems to be the more accurate
Yes, I've been
method. While
watching
both
the
options are assuming certain
Pretty
parts of
good too.
Wailord's shape, the Reddit one is taking precautions by doing multiple calculations to account for the nuances of both his shape and the differences in pixel measurements across games. I gotta say it, my friends, I am on Team Reddit for this one. But you guys know I'm not gonna just leave it there. These calculations, they're not perfect. Between its little grooves, its crevices, and the giant fins and tail, there is no perfect shape to truly describe what a Wailord is. It's not a cylinder shape, it's not an ellipsoid shape, it's just a Wailord shape. This
I like
is
One
where our
Piece? Yeah, I
two
started
density
watching it.
debaters get into trouble. But what
I'm still
also
on
complicates things is
episode
that the
like
scale
100.
of Wailord has never been consistent.
I started
Since
late.
Wailord is so much larger
When it
than
first
just
came
about
out, I
every
started
other
watching
Pokemon in
it.
the game, it's
I
always
stopped.
shrunken down, so
I
it can
started
fit within
watching
the
it again
confines
now,
of the
so
system,
slowly
the
catching up.
battlefield, or the screen. And with Wailord Waylord being so large, any amount of estimation error gets exaggerated to become a whale-sized problem. Without factoring in that sort of inconsistency, who knows? You might conclude something insane, like saying Wario is 10 feet tall or some ridiculous like that. As a result, my dearly beloved pixel measurements, they might not be the best tool to give us the most accurate numbers in this instance. So, how do we get the most accurate results and settle this debate once and for all? Well, in the wise words of Patrick Starr,
We have technology.
since the release of both the Reddit post and the research paper, Waylord has made the switch to the Nintendo Switch with Pokemon Sword and Shield. In the Isle of Armor DLC, we finally get to see Waylord in all his blubbery glory, just as Arceus intended, which means that we finally have access to a full 3D model of this Pokemon. No more pixel measurements based on
I'm
weird
like
angled
20
sprites
I'm like
required.
probably
This means
10
that we can take
episodes
this new
behind you.
100% accurate 3D model and import it into a
That's
3D
good so far. I'm
modeling
enjoying the
program
show.
like Blender. While this program is typically used for creating 3D models, it also allows you to do things like measure the volume of your, or in this case, Game Freak's creations. Therefore, as long as we have the proper scaling figured out, we can use Blender's built-in tools to get the exact volume of a Waylord. No estimates required, including the tails and fins. Now, up to this point, everyone's been using Waylord's Pokedex height to measure his length, which sounds confusing, but this is actually a common quirk amongst the Pokedex. Sometimes it means vertical height, but other times, especially when you're talking about long Pokemon like Waylord, it means length. But just to make sure that we didn't get the math wrong, I wanted to be extra careful. So I took a look at every depiction of Waylord that we've ever been given, like the size comparison tool from Generation 4, or the player character standing next to Waylord in Sword and Shield. Given that the trainers in the series are usually around 5 foot 4 inches, there's no way that Waylord's 47-foot height in the Pokedex could refer to anything other than his length. So, with that one settled, I was
Thanks for
able
the
to make
like,
sure that our
Gogeta.
Blender whale was scaled correctly.
Appreciate that.
And by creating a mesh for him, we can use Blender's volume calculator to tell us that Waylord has a volume of 182.8557 cubic meters precisely.
What are you
No
drawing right now?
estimates, no
I'm just drawing a
assumptions, that
hand.
is the exact number. From there, all we have to do is
I'm
divide
struggling with
Waylord's
this hand for some
398
reason.
kilograms by his volume to get a definitive density.
Trying to make it
Drum
look
roll,
good.
please.
Spending too much time on it though.
Really, that's the best we got. Gotta admit, I don't know what we gotta do at this point. I'm perturbed by the lack of a solid drum roll. Yo,
That's nice.
Fix
Play
it,
Marvel's
man.
Rivals?
Pull out all
Nice.
the expenses next time.
I wanna
want
play
a
some
drum
more,
roll
but I
that
wanna
will
finish this
melt
drawing.
minds. Promise? Yo, see, I put you in the shaving episode, so you better promise me. Thank
Marvel's
you. Where was I? Oh
Rivals.
yeah, his true density. Waylord's true density is
Hopefully level up more.
2.18 kilograms per cubic meter, which means that I can now say without a shadow of a doubt that Waylord is not
Oh, this hand's done.
lighter
I'm
than
gonna move
air.
on. I
Even
don't
if
wanna
you don't
spend too much
include
time on
Waylord's tail into overall calculation, it still wouldn't be enough to get him airborne. And honestly, all this
There's
checks
something
out.
bugging me about
Waylord
this
being
hand.
lighter than air would have broken the other information that the Pokedex tells us about him. Waylord's Pokedex entries going all the way back to Sapphire tell us that Waylord can knock out prey by the shock of its splash, which, you know, is gonna be pretty hard to do when you're so light you can't even hit the water. So there you have it, my friends. The debate is finally squashed. Waylord is not lighter than air. Reddit was right. Not completely, obviously, but their conclusion was pretty darn close for an estimate. I guess we'll just have to leave floating off to the sky to Team Rocket. And now with that one out of the way, tune in next time when we calculate how the density of Cosmoem would end the known universe. But hey,
I think it was pretty
while
good. Thank you very
the
much.
Pokedex is a
Appreciate
great
that.
tool for trainers like you to keep track of the heights and weights
Yeah.
of every Pokemon.
I'm just very,
it should also have something to help
particular
trainers
about
keep track of
things.
the most important thing, their finances.
Well, I should move
As we've
on,
said time and time
because this
again,
is-
being a Pokemon master
fine
ain't
enough.
cheap. Pokemon masters are broke. They can't pay them bills. Fortunately, today's sponsor SoFi is able to help you avoid that terrible fate. SoFi is the all-in-one personal
Like,
finance app that helps you
see a
bank,
bit of the thumb
borrow,
here.
and invest all at the same time. Tired of logging into multiple different accounts? Well, now you can just link them
Yeah.
all in the SoFi app. Even if you have accounts that aren't with SoFi, you can still link them to the app so you get a bird's eye view of all of your cash and investments in one location. You
Be a
can
little
even see
lower.
what categories you're spending the most money on, like monthly savings and recurring expenses like bills. It really is like the Pokedex of finance apps. But my favorite feature has got to be their insights and credit score monitoring, which SoFi not only offers you for free, but then they did the one thing that I couldn't resist. They made building your credit score competitive. Now I, like most YouTubers, like seeing numbers go up. Views, likes, subscribers. So I was already enjoying being able to see my credit score go up in real time, but now SoFi's made that dopamine
I wanna
hit
live in
even
Japan
stronger
so
by
bad. It's your
offering
favorite country?
rewards points every
Yeah?
time your credit score goes up. So now it's
I would like to
even
visit
more
Japan one
rewarding
day
to be
too.
financially responsible. In short,
You wanna
SoFi
live
just
there?
really understands what it means to be a
Okay.
finance app in the
What would you do in
modern
Japan
age. But that isn't the
if
only
you were
way
to
that you're
move
going to be
there?
able to make money with SoFi, because right now they're giving away $10,000 to help you achieve whatever financial goals you have. All you
Yeah,
gotta do
Japan
is
is
sign up for
on my list
SoFi
of places I
Insights
wanna
or
visit.
credit score monitoring using my link in the description.
I see
or
pictures, it's
scanning
very
the QR code
beautiful.
that you see on
All the
screen.
cultural
That way you can
landmarks and
enter
all
for
that
your
stuff.
chance to win. But even better,
And
again,
also
is
you have
ability to
the
not just
fun
get money
side, like
now,
the
but to be
anime
smarter with your
and
money
Nintendo
for
World
years to
mod
come.
stuff, which
And
would be cool to
SoFi
see.
is the best partner for
But
you
just
to help
overall,
you
like
on
the
that
culture,
journey. Again, for your chance to win that $10,000,
landmarks,
but more
like
importantly, win all the knowledge of finance moving
the
forward. That link
castles
is
and
in
all
the
the
description
bridges and
below,
all stuff.
or you can just scan the QR
Something I
code
want to
that you see on
experience. Looks
screen.
beautiful.
And as always, my friends, remember, it's all just a
The
theory.
gardens.
A
Oh my
game
god, their gardens are
theory.
amazing.
Thanks for watching.
Come on. What's wrong with Daddy? He got infected.
It'd be dope as hell.
Daddy, is that you?
Here, fix this nail. And this hand is done.
Let us do the heavy lifting with Walmart grocery delivery.
Well, I guess it's finally time to say goodbye.
Wow, I can't really believe it. We've been through so much together, trying to figure out how old you are, who your father is, even what level your Pikachu is.
Yeah, who's Ash's
Weird to
father?
think
That's a
that
good
it's all
question.
over. No, it can't be over. I know you finally achieved your dream.
Has anyone been watching
I'm not
Pokemon
ready to let
Journey?
you go.
Hey, I'm sure we'll still be able to see each other. I mean, if anyone's
I wonder
gonna
how's it
figure out a
going.
way to keep talking about me, it's
I have
gonna
not
be
seen a
you.
single
You really
episode.
mean that? Wait, what is this? That's it. I know how I can keep theorizing about you.
Well, that didn't take long at all. Eh, Pikachu?
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that knows that the truest of Pokemon Masters are the ones that catch the subscribe button. Speaking of catching, oh boy, was I not ready to catch all the feels when Pokemon released their newest trailer. After 9 regions, 52 badges, 83 Pokemon, so long as you count 30 Tauros, and 25 years of being 10 years old, Ash Ketchum is finally retiring as the protagonist of the Pokemon anime.
That's crazy.
Last year, Ash finally achieved his dream and became the Pokemon World Champion at the end of Pokemon Ultimate Journeys, which meant that, realistically, there really wasn't anything left for Ash to do as a character. He is literally the best, like no one ever was. But it's not like the anime can just end. That machine needs to keep on printing money. In other words, it needs some fresh blood, new faces, new heroes to learn the same lessons that Ash did along his journey. And in the latest trailer, we got exactly that. We were teased a new series set in the Paldea region from the newly released Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games. But instead of Ash, we get 2 new protagonists, Roy and Rico. Immediately after the release of this singular image, the fan base exploded with speculation about these characters.
Yeah.
They're going to be mentored by Ash. They're going to be
I would
introduced
buy
in the
all the
final episode
manga
of Ash's
physically
season.
possible,
Ash is gonna
visit
be their
everywhere,
rival,
and eat
but
all
of
the
all
food
the
they have.
speculation,
That'd be
one
awesome.
theory seemed to rise above the rest. That Rico, the new female protagonist, is going to be
Bounce
revealed
Japan,
as
I'll visit, like,
Ash's
all the
daughter.
famous
And
landmarks.
This isn't just the fan base wildly
And
speculating
Akubara,
to
I
keep
think it's
Ash a part of
called.
the series. The
Used
evidence
to be
they cite is
Electronic District, but it has a lot of
compelling.
electronics
First of all,
and
Rico has black hair,
pop
at least
culture,
partially,
which is like
which
anime and all that
obviously
stuff over
matches
there.
Ash's hair. But
It's
more
really cool to see that
importantly,
stuff.
she's wearing a hair clip that bears a striking resemblance to the L
It'd be cool to
symbol
live in
from
Japan
Ash's
for like a year
original
or
cap when he
something.
began his Pokemon
If I had the
journey.
opportunity,
Also,
I would.
careful-eyed fans noticed the necklace that she's wearing looks remarkably similar to the Thunderstone that Pikachu refused to evolve with back during the original anime. Could it be that her pops, Ash Ketchum, gave her this memento as
Is
a
that
symbol of
confirmed that
overcoming struggles
that's
and
Ash's
not taking
daughter?
the easy way out? Even the name Rico has been pointed out by some to be a nod to Rika Matsumoto, the longtime Japanese voice actress for Ash. And the theories didn't stop there either. Once everyone was done pinning Ash as Rico's dad, the internet did what it loves to do, good old-fashioned shipping. If Ash is the father, who then is the mother? Each corner of the fandom started throwing out ideas to prove that their favorite companion was the true Mrs. Ketchum. But looking around, it seemed pretty clear that people were just being blinded by the waifu goggles rather than the cold, hard facts of science. So, you know what that means? It's time for me to break out the old paternity test. Ready your eye
That's
colors
crazy.
and earlobes, friends. We're settling this debate
Ash
today. If Ash is
and
truly the
paternity
father
test.
of Rico, who
2 words that
is
down
the
over
mother?
here.
Let's start by figuring out our complete list of potential matches, shall we? If Ash is going to be Rico's father, then it makes sense that her mother would be a character that we as fans are already familiar with. Admittedly, it could just wind up being some random girl named Jennifer that we've never been introduced to before, but that'd be pretty lame. So
Yeah, it would
instead,
be.
we naturally turn to the roster of Ash's many, many female companions over the course of the
Yeah,
series.
Ash
find
had
his
a
special
lot of
romance.
female
I
companions.
compiled a comprehensive list of maybe mommies to find the perfect OTP for Ash, and wound up with 15 candidates in total. Obviously, we have Misty from the original series, May from the Advanced Generation, Dawn from Diamond and Pearl, Iris from Black and White, Serena from XY, Lily, Mallow, and Lana from Sun and Moon, and Chloe from the newest Pokemon Journey series. But to be extra thorough here, I also tossed in a few long
Like, if
shots.
I were to
These
live
are
Japan,
one-off or side characters
they
who
would
showed
have
some
no more
passing
food left
romantic
because my
interest
baby
in Ash during some point of the series.
he
This
would
list
eat all of it.
includes Melody from
That's a
Pokemon
lot of food in
Go
Japan.
2000,
That's
as well as
crazy.
Macy and Angie from Johto and Sinnoh, one-off characters that developed crushes on Ash.
If I was
usually
to go to
after they saved their
Japan, what would I
lives.
eat?
Hey, you two, you hanging in
I
there?
would definitely want
Thank
to
you,
try
Ash. No problem. Glad you're fine.
authentic
So
ramen.
brave and courageous and so
That would
caring.
be
So
on
you're
my
a
top
Pokemon
list.
trainer, huh? I guess he'll do. Here's your
It's some
traditional
authentic
welcome
ramen.
kiss. Mwah.
That
We
hands
also
down.
have Lyra from Diamond and Pearl
We're moving
and Miette
on.
from
We're
XY.
gonna-
Rival characters who
I'm done with
outright
that.
tell Ash's female companion for each series that if they don't make a move on Ash, they're just gonna steal him away.
I guess if we're all gonna spend the rest of our lives in here, we'll all get married here. I've got 3 choices.
One thing.
Either you tell Ash how you feel about him, or I'll tell
That's
him how I
crazy.
feel. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Finally, we of course have Latias. Yep, the Pokemon. If you're
What?
not familiar with this particular nugget of lore, at the end of the Pokemon Heroes Latios and
that's
Latias movie,
crazy.
the Pokemon Latias, in the form of a girl named Bianca, gives Ash a kiss, a move that shocks the whole gang,
Nah,
as well as everyone in the
no,
audience.
no,
And yeah,
Ash
the Pokemon movies
ain't
up to that point were
clapping
considered
Pokemon
canon.
cheeks.
So,
That's
with our
crazy.
complete list of 15 assembled, or 14 and 1 Pokemon, it's time to use our greatest companion
wild
science
behavior.
to narrow down this list of ladies and find the mother. Let's start with eye color, shall we? We've discussed eye color plenty of times on this show, so to quickly summarize, every single person has 2 copies of each of their genes. One comes from mom and one comes from dad. These genes come in different flavors called
Alleles.
alleles. Dominant alleles are for the traits that are
Easy to
stronger
look
and
biology
cover up
myself.
the weaker recessive alleled
What's that one
traits. When
famous
it comes
line
to
from
eye color,
Spider-Man?
there are actually 3 possible alleles.
I used to
Brown,
be
green,
somewhat of a scientist myself. Fantastic. I just got us that alt dog. Alt dog.
and blue. If you inherit a blue allele from your mom and a blue allele from your dad, well, congratulations, you got yourself blue eyes. 2 brown alleles give you brown eyes, and 2 green give you green. Super simple. But what happens when you get 2 different alleles? Well, in the case of eye color, brown is going to be the dominant gene, blue is recessive, and green is just somewhere in the middle. So if you get yourself 1 brown allele, it's going to butt in like Jesse's Wobbuffet, means you're likely going to have yourself brown eyes. If someone gets 1 green allele and 1 blue, they're going to have green eyes because green is dominant over blue. The only way to
That's
get blue
crazy.
eyes is with 2 recessive blue alleles. Knowing that, let's then apply it to Rico. Since Rico has blue eyes, we know for sure that she has 2 recessive blue alleles.
I mean, bro,
Except
I have
that
to go.
already
No
presents us
problem.
with
Thanks
the
for
problem.
stopping by.
Ash has brown
DJ
eyes,
Not
just like
Exotic.
his mom.
Appreciate
Sure,
it.
Ash may
Always a
have
pleasure, yeah.
brown eyes and
Hopefully
still
I'll
pass
have
on
the
recessive
finished
blue
artwork
alleles to his
posted
children, but it
by
makes
then.
odds of him
And make sure you
having a
follow me
blue-eyed
on my
child
Instagram and
much,
Twitter
much
and
lower.
Tumblr.
Now, while
Links
it's
are in
true
the
that
bio.
Rico's mother could also
Linktree.
have
All
herself
right,
a
take it
secret
easy.
blue allele. It is much more likely if Ash is the father that the mom has to have blue eyes, so she's guaranteed to pass that trait on. As such,
That
we're
makes
going to
sense.
eliminate all the candidates who don't have blue eyes. That eliminates Iris, Lily, Mallow, Chloe, Angie, Miette, and Latias. Which, whew, I am glad that we knocked Latias out right away. Because
Yeah.
the idea of Pokemon and humans
That's
having romantic
crazy.
feelings for each other would definitely be uncomfortable.
Smash.
Okay, the heart wants what the heart
Mark
wants.
replied.
It's Mark, after all. Who am I to deny this man his happiness? The blue
That's
eye criteria also
crazy.
puts Macy and Misty on the bubble because their eye color is annoyingly inconsistent. Sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's green. On the wiki, Misty's eye color is actually labeled as Viridian, which is both blue and green. So we're just gonna keep them both in the running for now. So with
Viridian
our potential
City.
mom list cut in half, it's time to look at our second favorite genetic trait, hair color.
Oh,
Hair
that
color is
makes
predominantly
sense.
determined by the presence or absence of 2 pigments in your hair. Eumelanin, a black-brown pigment, and pheomelanin, a yellowish-red pigment. You can actually think of these 2 as dials that can be turned up and down to generate a whole different range of hair colors. If your hair contains high levels of eumelanin and lower levels of pheomelanin, then your hair is going to be a dark color such as black or brown. If your hair has low levels of eumelanin and high levels of pheomelanin, then your hair is going to be lighter like a blonde or a redhead. And in between those is just a whole other spectrum of color. Now, in the main image that we've seen for Rico, it's kind of hard to tell what her exact hair color is thanks to the lighting. However, looking at this brief scene from the announcement trailer, it makes it a lot clearer that her hair is black with blue underlights. That's the official term for highlights that are hidden underneath the top layer of hair. Now, blue is, of course, not a natural hair color in our world, but this is an anime. Weird color hair just kind of comes with the territory. So we're gonna have to make some assumptions about the genetics of non-natural colors. Since more hair colors are possible in the anime world, that most likely means that there just must be more pigments besides eumelanin and pheomelanin. Therefore, there are more dials that we can play with when deciding hair color. There's probably a dial for green hair, purple hair, and most importantly for us, blue hair. Since Rico's hair is both black and blue, that means that the genes for both are gonna be cranked up to the max. If Ash is the father, that then explains the black hair, meaning that we need ourselves a mom that has blue hair to contribute that half of the genes. My deepest condolences to all the Serena and Misty shippers out there, because there are only 2 girls left in our list that have both blue eyes and blue hair. Dawn from Diamond and Pearl, and Lana from Sun and Moon.
Hey, Dane, is Ash your boyfriend?
Huh?
Huh?
No way! Come on, if you had to choose between the 3, who would it be?
I never thought of it.
Lana, is he your boyfriend? He's not!
That's crazy.
5 minutes ago, she'd never play piano. Can you believe she's been playing 1 week?
Alright.
So now that we've narrowed it down to 2, we need to find some feature to distinguish between our 2 female finalists. How do we decide between Dawn and Lana? Well, normally I'd go to earlobes or face shape, but honestly, it isn't nearly that complicated. All we really need to do is take a closer look at their eyes. If you look at Dawn's eyes, there are 3 different visible colors. The whites of her eyes, known as the sclera, the blue irises, and her black pupils. Now take a look at Lana. Notice anything strange? Her sclera is non-existent. What's even weirder is the fact that her pupils aren't black, they're actually white. And this isn't just part of the weird redesign that all the characters got for the Alola arc. Every other lead character has themselves normal eyes. And we know it's a genetic trait here because the only other characters
Lana would be a good choice for
quirky
it.
look are Lana's parents and her
Ash.
2 little sisters, Harper and Sarah. It is a trait that is passed between generations. And when we look at Rico, she's lacking that crucial family feature, meaning that Lana cannot be the mother. And so we come to the end of our investigation. Rico's mother and Ash's true shipping partner is, in fact, Dawn from Diamond and Pearl. She's got blue eyes to pass on the blue
That makes
allele, blue
sense.
hair to match with Rico's underlights, and actual pupils that her daughter can inherit. So there you have it, Ash and Dawn together forever. Unless that's not actually the full story here. I did a lot of research for this episode, and the more I looked, the more I realized that the initial premise this entire online theory is based on is shakier than Groudon's earthquake. This whole time we've been working with the assumption that Ash is the father, but no, it just doesn't make sense. Let's start with the hair clip, shall we? Well, the design is undeniably a reference to Ash's iconic cap. It's a hair clip. It's not a paternity test. Rico is just as likely to have gotten that clip the same way Ash got his first ever cap.
I had to send in about 1,000,000 postcards to win that hat.
You know what else that hair clip looks like? The antenna of an orbeetle. Maybe that's who the real father is.
Pass.
No accounting for taste, I suppose. And what about that Thunderstone necklace that supposedly came from the anime's original season? Well, it would make for a great story to say that Ash held on to that Thunderstone all these years and eventually gave it to his daughter as a symbol of how Pikachu and Ash got stronger through hard work. It would be a complete retcon of what we see happen in the story. We know what happens to that Thunderstone. It was originally featured all the way back in episode 14. And after Pikachu rejects it, the fate of the stone is left as an open mystery. However, it does finally show up again in episode 540 during the Diamond and Pearl arc. In this episode, Ash reveals that he's kept the stone the entire time.
What's that? It's
Really?
a thunderstone. Huh? You see, something like this happened once. And back then, the Nurse Joy from Vermilion City gave it to me. I've been holding on to it all this time in case Pikachu ever wanted to evolve into Raichu.
In the episode, the pair has to face off against another strong Raichu, meaning Ash and Pikachu must once again contemplate whether or not to use the stone to evolve. I love that it's not just enough to recycle the same plot theme, but even doing it against the same Pokemon? Like, why not a dragon Pokemon or a god Pokemon or something? Nope, those darn Raichu just always causing you to have that real existential crisis. Anyway, as you can probably guess, they decide not to evolve Pikachu again. But this time, there's a twist.
That's
Team
crazy.
Rocket
We're just saying
shows
real
up,
quick.
steals the Thunderstone, and at the end of the episode, reveal that they plan on selling it.
Hey, Sunshine, what about this?
Since pursuit can be expensive, let's sell it.
First we auction it online, so we'll all be rich.
In short, the Thunderstone is long gone before Ash ever thinks about having kids. And before you say it, no, Rico is not the child of Team Rocket. Trust me, I checked. Even the genetics are against Ash. Sure, Ash could have a recessive blue allele, but that's a big if. And the whole black hair thing, characters with black hair and blue eyes in this series are a dime a dozen. Just take Go from Journeys, or even Riley from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. For completeness, I also ran an analysis on their faces and found that, again, the likelihood of it being Ash was minimal. If you watched the episode where I revealed that Bo Burnham is secretly Dream's father, you'll know that face shape can be a big tell in genetics. So I found the best shots of all the characters facing forwards, did some pixel measurements, put them into an online face shape calculator, and the results were surprising. Most of the women ended up having the same or very similar ratios. Basically, all of them were categorized as a heart-shaped face. Rico also has a heart-shaped face, so it doesn't really help me narrow the field any. Now, scientifically speaking, daughters are supposed to get a balanced mix of their mom's and their dad's face shapes. And while Ash's measurements do lead to a heart-shaped face, all his other proportions are too big to match with Rico's. His jaw is much longer, his cheeks are wider, and his forehead is far too bulbous. Sore. Couldn't help myself on that one. All of this means that Ash's head is simply too large to be paired with any of the companions on the show in order to produce a daughter with the face shape of Rico. The science just doesn't add up. I don't think Rico's parents are going to end up having some significant lore implication. And you know what? I am more than happy with that. Well, yeah, it'd be cool to see the daughter of the legendary Ash Ketchum go on her own journey to become a Pokemon master like her father. I also think it would kind of defeat the purpose of bringing in a new protagonist in the first place. Pokemon is a story about how anyone can rise to greatness through hard work and determination. Ash started off as a derpy screw-up from a small town in the middle of nowhere. He had good intentions and a great heart, but not a lot of skill. Honestly, he still doesn't have a lot of skill. Using Thunder Shock for everything does not a strategy make. But he has matured. He's learned. He's grown. He's gone through more than his fair share of failures, and now he's achieved his childhood dream. To just hand the Torchic off to his daughter is falling into the trap that so many other franchises have fallen into recently, that you have to be one of the chosen ones in order to win. It undermines that core idea that this trainer could be anyone. It could be you. It's scary for things to change, but it's also okay. I also know that eventually Ash is gonna show up as a surprise battle for Rico towards the end of her journey, because that's how Pokemon do. So, while yes, I am loath to see Ash go, I'm also okay moving on, because let's be honest, he really should have gotten with Serena or Misty the entire time.
Yeah.
But hey, that's
Misty,
just
Team
an
Misty.
opinion. My gamer opinion. Thanks for listening. And
Misty
hey,
was
if
there
you're
from
still
the
not ready
beginning.
to say goodbye to Ash, why not check out our other episode where we figured out how old he really is. Maybe it'll make you rethink all the shipping we've been talking about in this episode. That video is over on the left. Or why not take a look at the video on the right to see our other massive Pokemon episode where we calculated Pikachu's actual level. For both of these, we had to watch a lot of anime to come up with accurate conclusions, so if you could hit that subscribe button, it would definitely make it worth all the hard work. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm blasting off again!
Are boxed mattresses any good?
If you've been looking for a mattress, you probably...
Why is Mad Pat drawing
Congratulations,
anime
you
girls?
are killing Pokemon. In the established canon of the Pokemon series,
funny.
we, our player character at least, are the
Yeah, it's a good
reason
question.
that at
Why
least
is Matt
25
Pat
Pokemon
drawing anime girls?
species have
Love
gone
that his voice is so
extinct. That's not even
recognizable.
really a theory. It is established within the canon.
That's
to
what
be
Matt
fair,
Pat
it's
decided to
buried
do
way down
when he
in there and
retired.
requires you to connect a few dots, but I have 100% confidence
Just
that
wanted a
Game
simple
Freak has
life of drawing
expressly put this in
waifus.
here for observant, dedicated players. And perhaps strangest of all, this steamrolling of the wildlife, us bumping innocent animals permanently off the mortal coil, it's all because of a message from God. The Pokemon god, Arceus.
What's
he
up?
gives us this divine mission to exterminate the Mon. If you thought Pokemon lore was weird before, just wait until you hear this one. Hello,
Gonna rip
Internet.
out this hand
Welcome
real
to
quick.
Game Theory, the only show that's nerdy enough to remind you that Ho-Oh isn't just a Pokemon. It's
Welcome to the
also the chemical
stream.
formula for hydrogen peroxide. Drop that knowledge bomb the next time you're in
No, I've been
chemistry class.
busy a little
Ladies
bit
and
this
gentlemen, there are
weekend,
3 things that are
but
certain in
have a
this
little free
world:
time
death,
tonight.
taxes, and new Pokemon games.
And
We just
I
had a
wanted to
Pokemon
finish this
Presents last
drawing
week. We're
really
rapidly
bad.
approaching the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Even Pokemon Go is making itself
Aw,
a bit of a
man.
resurgence. In short, Pokemania is in the air. So I figured it was time we took another look at the series, and what better
Speaking
game to
about
talk about than the smash hit
stuff,
of 2022, Pokemon Legends
has anyone
Arceus.
been able to
While
get any of
recent
those
remakes have
prismatic
literally just been
pre-orders or
recycling
anything?
the Pokemon formula that's been
It's
reused
crazy.
since the
Pokemon's at
90s,
all-time
Legends
high
Arceus
again.
threw that formula out into the trubbish. It's the first game in the core series to give players an open world to explore, but while it certainly was a new look, it wasn't a new world. In this game, you're actually running through an ancient version of Sinnoh, the region from Gen
When I
4
get finished
Diamond,
drawing,
Pearl, and Platinum. How
when
far
I
back in
have
the
free
past we're
time to
talking?
draw,
Unfortunately, the game doesn't explicitly
like,
tell us, but based
I'll
on
put
the
this drawing
somewhat
away.
modern
I
amenities
won't
of
work on this
Jubilee
drawing for like
Village, buying
2 or
books,
3
wearing
days.
hats, and steam-powered
So
Pokeballs,
usually I
as well
work
as the
out my on
architectural
stream.
inspiration for the Galaxy Hall. The game seems
Unfortunately.
to take place in the Meiji era of Japanese history, which took place from around
But hopefully I can finish it
1868 to
today.
1912. And given the
Well,
houses and clothing in Jubilee
all
Village
that
seem to
stuff.
resemble that of
Plus,
the
I slowly
Edo
work on
era
my drawings.
prior to Meiji, more likely to be closer to that 140
Slowly
years
adding
ago mark.
details.
So really, this thing was one part Pokemon game and one part history lesson for that fictional region. And while it's certainly fun picking up on all the similarities from two games set in the same region from two different time periods, like map locations, logo artwork, and ancestral connections between NPCs, what really tickled my theorist senses were the differences between the two regions that seem to have happened in that 140-year gap. There are some obvious ones, like the region's name being changed
see,
from
yeah.
Hisui to Sinnoh and isolated camps evolving into urbanized cities, but clearly I'm not here to talk about my love of geography or urban planning. I'm here to talk about the biggest difference of them all, the Pokemon. There are a good number of Pokemon that we find in the Hisui region that are completely new, ones that don't make an appearance in the Gen 4 games, their remakes, or any other core installment in the series. Doing a
We're
quick
almost
comparison
done.
of the Hisui
Once the
and
line
Sinnoh
work's
Nexus
done,
shows us that there's a
following's
whopping
just the easy part.
25 Pokemon that are found somewhere in the Hisui region that are completely absent from other titles. Pokemon like the adorable Hisuian Growlithe and the hauntingly new evolution of Basculin, Basculegion. But why? Where'd they
That's
go? We've
kinda
been
creepy.
in this region before. We've seen everything there is to see here. And yet, in the 140-year history between this game and Gen 4, 25 Pokemon apparently got wiped out. Unsurprisingly, the game never explicitly says what happened to all these Pokemon. Based on my findings, it's for a good
Welcome
reason.
to the
You see,
chat.
they're shielding us from the truth. We killed them. We're responsible. We're the reason those 25 Pokemon variants are gone now. We made them go extinct. So come with me, loyal theorists, as we go big lore hunting to figure out what exactly happened to all these new, old Pokemon. But before we set off on adventure, we have to be equipped like a Pokemon trainer. Have you ever stopped to think about how much stuff a trainer actually needs to carry around? Rare
No.
stones, candies, antidotes, whatever the heck a TM is. And that is where our newest line of theory wear comes in. That's right, it's merch drop time. Starting with our newest and most advanced backpack, the TechWear backpack. This thing literally is the backpack from the future. Heavy duty and with plenty of room for your laptop, your favorite Pokepal, or a collection of balls. Pokeballs. Eat your heart out, Ash Ketchum, because this isn't just a plain old green backpack. This thing comes with loop strings and bungee cords that allow you to quickly access all your most important theorist tools. This thing is loaded with function, but it's also loaded with fashion. That's actually why I wanted to lean more into the subtle coloring and branding with this one. It still shows off your theorist pride, but it's doing it in a way that can comfortably come with you to any school or professional setting. It's not gonna stand out like a sore thumb as obviously YouTuber merch. Or if you're looking for something smaller that can hold a couple of things in a simple grab-and-go style, check out the TechWear shoulder bag. It's compact and light, which makes it perfect if you live in a place where you have to do a lot of walking. True story, I've been in London for the past 2 months, and this bag has been a lifesaver because it was able to hold the few items that I wanted from the store, all without weighing me down or feeling like a burden to bring along. And considering it's been one of the hottest summers on record here in the city, one of the things that I was always bringing along in that bag, water, which is why I always kept the new Game Theory water bottle packed. This no-leak, practically
What a sell.
unbreakable
What a sell.
Nalgene-style bottle is built in with achievements written along the side to make it crystal clear when you've hit different hydration milestones along the way. Can you be one of the people to get the platinum trophy in hydration? Time to find out. Something else you could throw into that tech bag? Our new pack of perfectly pixelated playing cards. And to round the whole collection off, because I couldn't leave you without at least one piece of stylish clothing, we've got the tech tee. Y'all know that I love an asymmetrical design, right? So I leaned into it with a color-blocked sleeve and a tie-dye inspired pattern that washes across the front. In short, head on down to the description to catch them all.
We're
All
safe
the
real
latest
quick.
items in the merch drop before they disappear and go extinct. Kind of like Wordeer. Speaking of, let's start by looking at one of the first new Pokemon that we get to see in the game, Wordeer, the long-awaited evolution for the Pokemon Stantler. Now, in Legends Arceus, Stantlers are plentiful. You practically trip over these guys. But in Sinnoh, not so much. They can only be obtained on one specific route using the Poke Radar. And as for Wordeer, they don't exist. Like, not at all. For a Stantler to become a Wordeer, it needs to use the move Psy Shield Shield Bash a total of 20 times. But Psy Shield Bash isn't a move that Stantlers can learn in games set in the future. So not only has the overall number of Stantlers shrunk, but it's also lost the ability to use a move that's critical for its evolution into Wordier. That's weird, right? So inevitably I have to ask the question, why? Clearly the game designers consciously made this decision, so what are they trying to tell us? What reason
Thank you for
would
your
Stantlers
likes,
have
Joshua.
to forget an entire move? Well,
I'll be
Wordier's
back,
Pokedex
though.
entry actually gives us a hint.
The black orbs shine.
I guess I can't use my normal Pokedex voice since this game doesn't have an electronic Pokedex. Gotta go with the old-fashioned method.
The black
Be
orbs
right back,
shine
skim some
with
water.
an uncanny light when the Pokemon is erecting invisible barriers. The fur shed from its beard retains heat well and is highly useful material for winter clothing.
Useful in cold weather, huh? Sure sounds like something that the citizens of the cold Hisui region would find pretty valuable. Once people read that Pokedex entry, it's likely they're going to be tempted to try and get their hands on Wordier to obtain that precious fur, especially as they continue expanding into areas like the icy north. So it would seem like Wordier were hunted to extinction for their fur, while the remaining Stantlers did their best to avoid evolving, choosing to flee rather than fight, much like real-life deer are known to do. For the Stantlers, evolving just wasn't worth the added stat increase if it made it harder to survive. After generations and generations of Stantlers avoiding fights with humans, and especially avoiding the use of Psy Shield Bash out of a fear of evolving, they would eventually forget how to use the move entirely in order to help their chances of survival. No Psy Shield Bash means no evolving, means no Wordier. And they aren't the only species that was basically bullied into extinction either. Take the Hisuian Quillfish, a regional variant that's been totally wiped out from Sinnoh by the time Gen 4 rolls around. Looking at its Pokedex entry though, immediately you start to see why this guy might have been on the chopping block. It tells us that
Fishers detest this troublesome Pokemon because it sprays poison from its spines, getting it everywhere. A different form of Quillfish lives in other regions.
if you look at the Cobalt coastline, one of the main locations for Hisuian Quillfish, we see that in the intervening 140 years, this actually becomes Gen 4's Route 223, a prime fishing location thanks to the Sunny Shore Market and a swimming location on the way to Victory Road. What this tells us is that fishermen, fed up with the poisonous quillfish, hunted them to extinction so the coastline could be better used for commercial and recreational purposes. They eliminated what they saw as a problematic fish, which directly leads to what we see in Sinnoh years later. And it's not like it would be hard for them to do either, considering the Diamond and Pearl Pokedex entries call the quillfish a poor swimmer. There's also a second reason that fishermen might have wanted to get their hands on the quillfish, but this one isn't as directly called out. Food. We've talked over on Food Theory about eating Pokemon, but quillfish are likely to be a delicacy in this universe. There's a type of real-world pufferfish called fugu. It contains a super deadly neurotoxin, just like our good old poisoned type Hisuian quillfish, and it too is a delicacy in many parts of Japan, only being served by specially trained chefs who know how to prepare the meat without killing their customers. Hisuian quillfish would probably work in the same way. Regardless though, whether it was to clear a nuisance or fill the restaurants, humans were the ones that wiped these guys out from the coastlines of Hisui. Speaking of being hunted, let's look at two more examples of hunted Pokemon, Hisuian Voltorbs and Electrodes. Looking at them, it's immediately clear that these two have had some of the most dramatic changes in their design. The Kanto versions of these Pokemon are made of some sort of metal-like compound, while the Hisuian Electrodes Pokedex entry says that the body is made of a, quote, material curiously similar to apricorn wood. Now, this is an important detail because historically, apricorns were used to make Pokeballs. In Legends Arceus, apricorns are everywhere. But in Sinnoh, there's no more of these trees to be found. So what happened? Well, by the end of Legends Arceus, because of the work that we did throughout the game, people are now looking to catch Pokemon for themselves. As a result, it's likely that they began to harvest apricorns at an alarming rate to craft their own Pokeballs. But in the rush, no one thought to do it sustainably. And suddenly, there are no more apricorn trees left in the region. So, without the wood to build Pokeballs, what do you do then? You start to hunt the animal that has a body made of a very similar wood, Hisuian Voltorbs and Electrodes. Over time, to avoid going extinct, Hisuian Voltorb and Electrode may have evolved into their metal form that would prevent them from getting poached by the would-be Kurtz of the world. And this directly mirrors the animal behavior that we see in real life. Many elephants are slaughtered specifically for their tusks, right? Well, this has historically been happening so much that elephants in heavily hunted areas are now starting to evolve to have smaller tusks, or even no tusks at all. Since poachers are hunting them for those tusks, elephants with no tusks have an evolutionary advantage, thereby passing that trait along, just like a metal Voltorb and Electrode would have a survival advantage over their wood variants. But it wasn't just overhunting that was a problem in that 140-year period, it was also an overuse of the region's resources. Ursaluna and Cleaver are two new evolutions of Ursaring and Scyther that we see in Legends Arceus that require the use of a specific item to evolve. Ursaring needs the peat block and Scyther needs the black augurite. And while while Ursaring and Scyther are certainly easy to obtain in the Gen 4 games, their evolutions aren't present because neither of these items exist anymore, which we can explain by looking at the differences between Hisui and Sinnoh. The peat block item is based on the real-life material known as, well, peat. Basically, it's like a precursor to coal. It takes thousands of years to form, and it can be burned for fuel. Based on the cities that we see in Gen 4, it's clear that there was an increase in industrialization in the Sinnoh region. Industrialization means machines, and machines need fuel. And hey look, here's a readily available material that's just laying here with no other discernible purpose. Might as well use it until it's gone. Black augurite actually suffers a similar fate. The name originally led me to believe that black augurite is based off the mineral augite. However, looking at the in-game sprites and description, the two don't seem to line up. Its black, glassy texture actually makes it more likely to be obsidian. Obsidian's a material that's made from the rapid
I am back.
of lava, and it's been used for centuries as a sharp material for tools. The only active volcano that we see in the Hisui region is this one off the Cobalt coastland, which, based on its shape, is what they call a cinder cone volcano. Cinder cone volcanoes don't tend to make obsidian. The only other place it could have come from is Mount Coronet, which the box art does seem to imply is a volcano, but it appears to have been dormant for years. Therefore, it's safe to say that black augurite is going to be in limited supply. It, along with peat, are non-renewable resources. So when humanity expanded its presence in the region and wound up using up all these items, Ursaring and Scyther no longer had the ability to evolve. You know who else disappeared from the region because the natural environment changed? Arcanine, Avalugg, and Decidueye, who all have Pokedex entries that specifically mention being adapted to the colder climate and snow of the Hisui region. Hisui is an island, and islands are small. When habitats are smaller, that means that the organisms that live there need to become more specialized. For example, take the famous finches studied by Charles Darwin on the Galapagos Islands. What he saw was that each finch evolved a completely unique beak shape based on the island that it lived on. This comes with the benefit of making you really well suited to your environment, but the downside is that if anything changes, then your specialized traits won't do you any good. And that's exactly what happened with these Hisui
It's all about Pokemon. It's so based in real life. It's crazy.
Industrialized, the climate of Hisui became warmer. This uptick in human development, the deforestation that came with it, all of it led to a shift in biodiversity of the region, meaning some of these Pokemon were no longer able to make the cut. Now, these are only a few examples of what happened to these region-specific Pokemon, but you can see the pattern, right? All of these Pokemon are gone thanks to one specific factor: humans. Humans plundering resources, humans over-hunting, humans over-expanding. In the 140 years between Legends Arceus and Gen 4, humans have completely morphed the landscape of the Sinnoh region, and the game designers have clearly thought through that history. They didn't just insert designs and evolutions into this world arbitrarily. The whole thing was thoughtful, intentional. It was told to us through hints in the Pokedex. In the end, we get ourselves a game that has a really
Mr.
strong
Fantastic?
environmental message.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
Piece together the breadcrumbs that
Pretty
they
bad,
left behind for us. Except there's still
like,
one
when I was
piece that
playing with
haven't
him,
connected. During the
I
game,
wasn't playing
we
with
learned
him,
the people
but
of Hisui are
every time
afraid of
I'm playing the
Pokemon.
game,
Some
like,
even worship them.
this guy's like
The little
smashing
village that you start
everybody.
off in isn't able to
I think he's more
expand, or because
destructive
they're
than the
afraid to
Hulk,
face the
to be
monsters
honest.
that lurk out in the wilderness. But someone
I think
changes
he's very
that,
destructive.
and in so doing, signs Hisui's death warrant. That person is you. At the start of the game, your character is called back in time by the god Pokemon Arceus. When you land, you're immediately tasked with catching Pokemon, something that other people are afraid to do. But you know better. You come from the future, so you persist. You teach people that Pokemon can be your friends, that they can be used to help with chores. You can even collect them and use them for competitive sport. Without this fear of Pokemon, the human race is now able to expand throughout
I got
Hisui.
13
Thanks
to
to you,
3.
they're
That's pretty
no
good.
longer
Amazing.
afraid to hunt word-ear for their fur, to exterminate pests like the quillfish.
Yeah,
or to
I
use
want
up
to play
the
some
land's natural
not
resources.
Arceus.
If you had
I want to
decided
play
to
that though,
not
but
be a hero, to
I want to play
not
some
save the
Marvels
day, the region would
Rivals.
have remained too inhospitable for civilization to
After
truly grow,
this.
and humans would have chosen to avoid it entirely. Kinda makes you wonder if that god Pokemon who sent us back in time was so benevolent after all. But hey, here's your last reminder to head on down to the description to get your hands on the latest line of Theorist merch. Whether you're looking to head out on adventures for the summer or just wanted to get yourself ready for school this fall, this latest drop is perfect for you. The backpack is especially great for anyone in need of some new swag for the upcoming school year. It's got the signature game theory style, but in a way that isn't too bright or loud, so you'll be able to fit in with everyone else while still rocking that Theorist pride. So head on over to the merch store or click the link down in the description to pick up a water bottle, a bag, or some playing cards before they disappear forever, just like the Pokemon of Hisui. And as always, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. And hey, if you like this dark Pokemon theory, there's plenty more where that came from. It's not just Hisuian Pokemon that are doomed. Shiny Pokemon aren't much better off. You can check out that theory by clicking right here. Or you can find out what level Ash's Pikachu is by watching the video on your right. Yep, I really did the math. While you're at it, throw a Pokeball over at the subscribe button so whenever we do do more theories, you'll be the first to catch them.
All right, so Mark just uploaded his reaction to my perfect Pokemon. Really excited. All right, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Markiplier's perfect Pokemon.
All right.
I have to say, no matter what Mark thinks, this turned out great.
It's awesome. Turned out so well.
I love this design.
It's uncomfortable watching him analyze it. Okay, getting in on the details. Sure. Yep.
Pass. Ooh. I felt that one.
No, no, no. Put away the wasted effect. This doesn't deter me at all. If anything, this has made me stronger. If you think you're gonna crush my dreams with one word, think again. I'm back. And I'm not giving up. My middle name is Determined. Patrick, Matthew, Determined, Robert, Patrick. Makes perfect sense.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show where failure just means another week of content. Now, I'm sure you've all seen it, the devastating blow that I received at the hands of Markiplier.
What did you say? Who's that?
What did you do? Do not confuse whether this is mine! No, not him phasing me out of existence in In Space Part 2. Something far worse. He refused to smash my Pokemon.
Pass.
Pass? What do you mean, pass? I calculated everything so perfectly. I spent hours going through your video, looking at every detail, every shape, every color. I even analyzed your facial expressions to gauge your reactions, and I followed that data to a T. And you pass.
Because you seem to assume things that aren't even there, no matter what I say. I have integrity. Unlike some people, Matthew, Patrick.
I refuse to accept that. To catch everyone up, after Markiplier released a video where he smashed or passed on every Pokemon in existence, I thought it'd be fun to crunch the numbers, see what trends emerged in the data, and from there design his perfect Pokemon. Yes, it is now a fact that I have data sheets, plural, as well as charts and graphs saved to my computer dedicated to what fictional creatures a fellow content creator finds smashable. I'm not weird, you're the weird one. We then took that data set and collaborated with an artist to capture everything that seemed to light a fire under his Flareon. A purple mammal with a generally rounded face, sultry eyes, long, strong, head-crushing legs, and a suggestion of psychic powers and femininity. And thanks to you all, it had a name too. After sifting through the comments, Twitter, and the Game Theorist subreddit, there was one name that I kept seeing time and time again, with a good number of upvotes to boot. And so our Pokemon will now and forever be known as Neferkitty. Love it. Thank you to everyone for the suggestion. Anyway, Neferkitty literally ticked every box. And yet you, Mark, had the audacity to pass. And then literally 4 days later, your next video was you getting all hot and bothered over a giant Egyptian cat lady.
Oh, you big. Oh, you big lady.
Hey. Oh, yeah, he's trolling.
Look at the two! The similarities are uncanny. But no, Auntie Nyan Nyan got the smash and we got passed. Well, I call foul. Or feline, I guess, since they're cats.
Seriously, Matt, thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't smash your perfect Pokemon.
Oh, sure. Laugh it up atop your throne of lies. Because the joke's on you, Mark. I'm not done. If you think you can crush me with one word, think again. Have you seen how many times I've been wrong about FNAF? Your rejection just makes me more determined. So I did what any sane person would do.
That's
I went
right.
back to those same tables and spreadsheets, reanalyzed the data, and brought in an artist to have one more attempt to appease Mark's strange Pokemon desires. And what do you do with your free time? Let's quickly reestablish all the traits that we saw in Markiplier's dataset. From a visual standpoint, he showed a preference for Pokemon that were either humanoid, mammal, bug, or bird. 15 out of the 73 that he chose to smash had purple as their primary color, with black and pink tied for a close second. This also aligns with a strong typing preference for psychics. Shape-wise, he liked rounded head shapes coupled with pointy features like beaks, claws, talons, or spikes, cause he's definitely not a masochist. Markiplier also gave big reactions to Pokemon that had traditionally feminine features, and he specifically called out their big, strong legs.
How many times have I said,
I want a woman that could crush my head in between her thighs.
Finally, he skewed towards Pokemon that were in the final step of their multi-part evolutionary line, with height landing somewhere between 4 foot 5 inches tall and 5 foot, so 1.35 to 1.53 meters. There were a few other things mixed in there too, but they don't really play a huge part in the overall physical design. Last time we decided to go with a mammal for our base design, as we felt like that gave us the most flexibility to work with, but that may very well have been part of the problem. There are many mammals out there in the world, all of which look very different from each other. A cat is nothing like an elephant, and an elephant is nothing like a whale. The point is, the category was just too broad. So this time, I wanted to go with one of his other preference categories. Looking at the data,
Hour 35, that's a personal best.
let's go!
Let's go!
In addition to mammals, Mark also smashed a high number of humanoids, bugs, and birds. We decided to take humanoids off the table because we didn't really want to pay someone to draw sexy, almost humans. Bugs could have been fun, but looking at his bug choices, they seemed very meme-ish. I think he was choosing a lot of those for the lols, which left us making a bird Pokemon. Now, there is a huge variety within bird-type Pokemon. After all, I'm not entirely sure what this thing is really supposed to be, but on the whole, birds in the Pokemon world do remain relatively similar, sharing key features like beaks and talons. Features which we know appeal to Mark's masochistic side. So with that as our base, I felt pretty darn confident that this time we'd be able to hit a home run. From there, I also wanted to draw some inspiration from a data point that didn't really make it into our final design last time. During that video, I briefly mentioned that Mark had a thing for Generation 7 Pokemon, considering that this was where most of his smashes came from, 16 in total. As a reminder, Gen 7 was the era of Sun and Moon, games that took place in the Alola region, Pokemon's version of Hawaii. He even specifically smashed 2 bird Pokemon from that region, Oricorio and Decidueye. Considering that Mark is originally from Hawaii, maybe these Pokemon were tapping into some subconscious desire related to the place of his birth. So this time around, I wanted to find a way to include some more Hawaiian elements into the overall design, starting with what bird to base it on. Hawaii has its fair share of native bird species, but during our process, we all fell in love with the honey creeper, a species that comes in a variety of colors and beak shapes. Now, I just mentioned that Mark smashed Oricorio, which, what you know, is also based on the honey creeper and comes in 4 varieties. So using that as a base felt like it would be putting us in a strong position. I mean, if he liked the original design, which doesn't even hit on all the data points that we covered in our first video, then surely by adding to it, we could create something that was truly irresistible. But I did just want to leave the Hawaii theme there. As much as I love Mark, I'm not convinced that he's read up on his Hawaiian fauna, so I needed to do more if I wanted to truly sell it. And then it hit me. When you think of Hawaii, what are some of the first things that come to your mind?
Flowers.
For me, it's flowers, specifically the hibiscus flower. If you've ever been to Hawaii, you'll know that one of the biggest traditions is to offer guests a lei made of flowers, often hibiscus when they arrive. This is because the hibiscus is a symbol of friendship and hospitality. So by giving our bird Pokemon plumage in the style of a lei, I was hoping to tap into Mark's subconscious. This Pokemon not only representing his birthplace, but also welcoming him back home, giving him a sense of comfort and belonging. Even from a non-subconscious perspective, Mark did smash a number of Pokemon that visually used plants or flowers. The obvious one being Florges. He did have quite the reaction to it after all. So, including flowers in the design will hopefully yield similar results. But it doesn't even stop there. The hibiscus flower also has another meaning, that of divine femininity. One of the major data points that we discovered during our initial video was that Mark was drawn to Pokemon with more traditionally feminine qualities, so it only made sense to include a hibiscus to once again act on Mark's subconscious, adding to the obvious feminine features that we'd want to give it. Specifically, we put the flower on the left-hand side of its face, which according to Hawaiian tradition is a sign that the individual's ready to take a lover. So there's your invitation, Mark. It is ready for you to come in and sweep it off its feet. From there, we're leaning a lot into the other elements that we felt confident about last time. We've kept it psychic typing, so an overall intelligent look was a must. We, of course, had to give this thing some strong head-crushing legs. Nefertiti had strong legs, but as Mark passed on that one, I wanted to go bigger, I wanted to go stronger, I wanted to go pointier. So there was no question what this thing was going to be capable of. Bulging leg muscles, talons that could really hurt once they dug in, and some knee-high boot-styled feathers for the perfect step-on-me vibes like we saw from Mark's original top 3 picks. For color, we once again wanted purple to be the primary, because that was obviously Mark's favorite based on the data. But with our new Honey Creeper inspiration, we wanted to do something that leaned more on the lighter side. Last time we stuck with darker, more dusty purple tones, but Honey Creepers are brightly colored with strong black accents around the eyes and wings, and considering Mark's second favorite color was black, fact that was gonna work well for us. Speaking of eyes, we also wanted to add an air of confident mystery to this design, something that said strong and seductive, but also unobtainable. So we had our Pokemon front-facing, but we specifically kept one eye covered, giving it that strong seductress look, but also making you curious as to what it could be hiding. And of course, I've already mentioned the flowers, but those also needed to be bright and colorful to match the Hawaiian feel that we were going with, something that would contrast with the purple nicely, but also feel natural for a honey creeper. So you got all that? You have an understanding visually of what this thing is gonna look like? Well, with all those pieces in place, I present to you Markiplier's new perfect Pokemon. It's beautiful. Mark, if you are not into this one, then I know you must be trolling me at this point. Look at it! The power, the mystique. Why is it hiding its eye behind those beautiful feathers? What psychic power does this thing truly hold? Joking aside, I think more than anything this taught me, and hopefully taught you too, how many small details go into a design like this. Everything from the animal inspiration, the overall shape, color, length of features, expression, shading, all of it trying to tell a complete story of who this creature is in one still picture. And now, go and repeat this 150 more times and you've got yourself a generation of Pokemon. It's no wonder they make some of these things vanilla ice cream cones. They are just exhausted by this process. This took us a couple weeks of back and forth with our artist. Just to give you an idea, here's a few of the dozens of samples and iterations that we tried before settling on this one. Look at how the small changes in posture and shape make such a big difference in the look and feel of the Pokemon. And I think that there's still more we could have done. That's just the trick of creative stuff like this. It can cycle in on itself, constantly being refined and perfected, but I think for our overall mission, it feels based on the data like we ticked every single box. This is truly everything that Markiplier could have possibly wanted. Well, almost everything. You see, this whole time we've been relying on the data, but maybe that's the real problem here. Maybe the moral of the story is that data can't always solve everything, that some things just can't be quantified, that sometimes you need a bit of the human touch. It's actually something that I talked about over on Film Theory in our episode Trying to Save Netflix. Just like algorithms can't form the perfect show, so too can algorithms not design the most smashable Pokemon. So, you know what? I went in and threw away my checklist, I scrapped the numbers, and I trusted my gut. Knowing everything that I know about Mark, I made what I guarantee to be his perfect, irresistible Pokemon. Just try to pass on this one. I mean, he is a self-proclaimed raging narcissist after all.
I was so wrapped up in my own self-image, my narcissism oozing out of every pore of my body.
So what could possibly be a better fit? So there you have it, my second and third attempts to crack the code. Once again, I'm looking to your suggestions for names. One for this bird and another for this unholy creation. So give your suggestions down in the comments below. And don't worry, this is going to be my final attempt. At the end of the day, I'm just a boy standing in front of another boy asking him to smash my Pokemon. But you know what? If it doesn't work out this time, I guess there are always other Magikarp in the sea. But hey, before you go, I wanted to ask you another quick question. What do our two new Pokemon have in common besides being smashable? They both sport beautiful, flowing heads of hair. I mean, just look at those gorgeous locks on our bird. And Mark, well, he's been sporting those luscious locks for years now. It would be a shame if either of them were to lose it one day. Fortunately, thanks to today's sponsor Keeps, they don't have to worry. Let's be honest, losing your hair is no joke. In fact, 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. And while some people look great with a bald head, others, myself included, are probably better left unshorn. That's why Keeps is great, because just like we did our research into Mark's Pokemon preferences, they've done their research to create a product that's clinically proven and approved by doctors to help you keep your hair. I think we all know whose research was more worthwhile. And while you might not be sure what treatment's right for you, Keeps once again has you covered with their 24/7 network of medical advisors to ensure that the products you're getting are right for your specific needs. Best of all, you don't even have to make the awkward trip to the pharmacy to ask about it. I mean, talking to people is already the worst, right? But talking to people about something sensitive like hair loss, that's even worser than the worst. But with Keeps, you can do it all online from the comfort of your own home and get the treatment shipped straight to your front door. So if you're looking to fight male pattern baldness or prevent it from being a problem in the future, head on over to keeps.com/gametheorists. That's KEEPS.com/GAMETHEORISTS. That is way too long for you to type out, but you know the drill. You can just go down to the top line of the description below. If you sign up using our our link, you'll get 50% off your first order. Considering that Keeps is already half the cost of the usual pharmacy treatments, this is a bargain that you cannot pass up. Again, head on down to the description below to start your journey to having that Markiplier hair today. And as always, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Cliff Bar is made with organic oats, but you're made for the climb. The most important ingredient is you.
Ready to make it count?
Make it count with an RBC bank account. Switch to RBC.
Pass. 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 Pass.
What's this?
Pass. Smash.
Wait, why would he want to smash a Beedrill? You mean like crush it because it's a big bug?
Matt.
Wouldn't that be like a smooshing it or a swatting it maybe?
Oh my God, Matt.
Oh, gross. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that can't pass on the opportunity to ask you to smash that subscribe button. Very proud of that intro. Today's episode is dumb, stupid, whoopid, silly, willy, in all the best ways possible. Not since the Luigi's Eggplant episode has there been something this dumb and ridiculous on the channel, but you know what? Here we are, and I gotta admit, I am excited about it. We've been so serious lately, talking about FNAF and Inscription and ARGs. It's time to go back to the basics. The roots of this channel, analyzing one man deciding whether or not he'd enjoy having relations with 900 fictional animals. Ah, Markiplier.
Hit him with the dab! It's still alive! It's 2020! Come on, bring it back!
We actually have a bit of back and forth when it comes to our channels. He plays Power Wash Simulator and asks for a theory.
I want a deep dive video from MatPat about the lore of Power Wash Simulator.
I, like the good friend that I am, make the theory about it. He creates a mystery series full of lore. I dissect said lore. He plays Security Breach and calls people who pick Monty Golf nerds.
Anyone that picks Monty Golf is just a nerd.
I, of course, go on to pick Monty Golf. Woo! Gator Golf. But if there's one thing I love more than Mark, it's math. Numbers. That sweet, sweet data. So when Mark uploaded a Smash or Pass video covering all 900 Pokemon, that was like the stars of content aligning. The whole thing happened with no context, no explanation, and seemingly no consistency.
Pass. I really did not mean to say smash. This is horrifying. Smash.
But what if there was a subconscious pattern here? Some sort of logic that cuts through the seemingly random knee-jerk choices? What if there was a perfect Pokemon that Markiplier missed? Or better yet, what if we created for Markiplier his perfect Pokemon? I had to look into it, and with the power of math on my side, I believe I found something. Despite the preferences that he voices in the video, his subconscious was making decisions that even he didn't fully understand.
Smash. Why?
Well, don't worry, Mark. As your friend, I'm here to help you out. So let's dive into this meme-ish madness to see what this video actually tells us about Markiplier's Smash or Pass preferences. Also, quick disclaimer before we start, not here to cast judgment or comment on any sort of sexuality. We're just sticking to the data and the trends that Mark provided about his preferences on fictional creatures. Love equals love, even when that means Mark's love for a giant sentient pile of sand.
Weirdly Smash.
When the Smash or Pass video ends, Mark has said Smash to 73 Pokemon. Yes, I recognize that the video counter actually says 72, but when he says Smash to Lunala, the counter doesn't go up for whatever reason. When you look at the totality of the 73 that he chose, there's a real variety here. So before we get into the whole data set, I thought it'd be a good idea to start with the Pokemon that he didn't just choose to smash, but that he had a noticeable response to. Over the course of the video, there are 3 in particular that merit an over-the-top reaction. Florges, Sarina, and Pheromosa.
Smash.
Lining these three up side by side, you can immediately start to see a trend appearing. What I would describe as traditionally humanoid feminine features. Sultry eyes, long legs, that kind of thing. Pheromosa and Sarina even talk about these features in their Pokedex entries. Quote from Pheromosa's Ultra Sun entry,
"A life form that lives in another world. Its body is thin and supple, but it also possesses great power."
And from Pokemon Sword's entry on Sarina,
"This feared Pokemon has long, slender legs and a cruel heart. It shows no mercy as it stomps on its opponents."
what this shows us is not only do these two have traditionally feminine qualities, they're also incredibly strong and prone to violence. Definitely coincides with data that we've seen from Mark in the past.
How many times have I said, I want a woman that could crush my head in between her thighs?
Yeah, Pheromosa definitely has those step on me vibes.
People might mistake me for some kind of a masochist, which isn't true and would be ridiculous for people to think about.
In fact, I was surprised by how many Pokemon he chose that did have sharp teeth, claws, talons, and spikes. 19 to be precise, 26% of his choices. Now, obviously that means that 74% of his choices didn't have things that could cut, tear, or gouge him, but it felt like quite a high percentage for someone that vehemently denies being a masochist.
Do you think Mark is a masochist? Yes. It's so completely obvious, but for some reason he's in denial about it.
Outside of those physical features, it's about it. Nothing much to unite the key three, so I then took a look at the wider data set. And it's there that you really start to see some fascinating trends. Looking at every Pokemon Mark would smash, his overwhelming preference were Pokemon from Generation 7, 16 of the 73, roughly 22%, including choices like Zalazzle and Primarina. The interesting thing about that is that Generation 7 primarily took place in Alola, Pokemon's version of Hawaii, and wouldn't you know it, but Mark was born in Hawaii. Clearly, he felt some kind of deep-seated connection with the Pokemon native to his birthplace, despite these choices being made without him recognizing anyone past Gen 1.
Now we're getting into things that I have no idea. Are these even real Pokemon anymore?
Sometimes the heart just can't articulate what the heart wants, but deep down, it knows what feels right. And while Mark immediately shows an innate preference for leggy Hawaiians, beyond that, he appears to be fairly open-minded. Take typing, for instance. Mark, in general, shows no discrimination. Every type here has been smashed at least twice, but his top types are Psychic, which came out to 11 smashes, closely followed by Water with 10. All the rest were 8 or lower, with Steel and Rock being the bottom two categories. But Psychic being at the top actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. We've established Mark's attraction for humanoid figures in the Pokemon, and if you look at Psychic types, a decent number of them appear to be in the human-like egg group. Even ones that don't appear there do tend to have human or fairy-like qualities, like Mewtwo or the Tapu legendaries. Speaking of appearances, it's probably worth talking about color. I mean, things like type aren't necessarily obvious when you first look at them. Even the anime has this running joke about Pseudo-Wudo looking like a tree, but actually being a rock type.
Pseudo-Wudo's a rock type? That's pretty hard to believe. Rock types are usually rough and rocky. Pseudo-Wudo's more like a grass Pokemon.
So, while Mark's type selection may have been more of a subconscious one, color is something that's very hard to ignore when the Pokemon is right there in front of you. Looking at the primary and secondary colors of each of his choices, Mark showed a preference towards Pokemon that contained large amounts of the color purple, closely followed by pink and black. Purple to me seemed like an obvious choice, as I've always associated with the Psychics, but when I looked back at it, there aren't actually that many purple Psychic types. I guess it was always the Psychic Energy card from the TCG that had been burned into my brain. Anyway, purple in color theory combines the calm stability of blue with the fierce energy of red. Both things that I think embody Mark to a T.
I'm pretty sure this was not part of my contract, and frankly, I hate everything you stand for and everything that you are.
Oh my god! I'm done! Oh god! Oh my god!
Purple is also the color associated with royalty. Again, a not too unfamiliar Markiplier trait.
Place the crown upon my head and then call me the king of Five Nights at Freddy's!
Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Mark's preferences when it comes to other features.
8 feet tall? Are you kidding me?
She's very large, very powerful, very large.
Height and weight, obviously not something that's immediately obvious when you look at a Pokemon. And if you have any connection with the anime, you know that height and weight are, inconsistent there at best. But I looked at it anyway. Mark did choose a couple of big boys, namely Wailord at 14.5 meters or 47 feet long and weighing in at the whopping 398 kilograms or 877 pounds. Something tells me, Mark, in that situation, you're not the one doing the smashing. And while that's certainly one end of the spectrum, he once again shows a willingness to diversify his tastes, with him going so far as to smash smash Sinistee, the black T Pokemon that measures in at 0.1 meters or 4 inches tall and weighs in at only 0.2 kilograms or 0.4 pounds. All that being said, when you look at the graph, there is a definite trend here. Sure, there are a number of outliers, but most of his choices were under 100 kilograms and also under 2 meters in height, with his averages sitting at 1.53 meters, just over 5 foot tall, and 58 kilograms, or 130 pounds. The average woman in the United States is 1.5 meters, or 5 foot 3.5 inches tall, and weighs in at 77.5 kilograms, or 171 pounds. So in spite of Markiplier's insistence that he likes them big,
how many times have I said, I want a woman that could crush my head in between her thighs?
The evidence actually shows that his preference is for Pokemon that are smaller than average.
I'm king of the squirrels!
I mean, I wasn't implying that small, but you did just help me segue into my next point, animal groups. You know, mammals, fish, reptiles, birds, amphibians, invertebrates, those sorts of groups. It's a very simple way for us to group animals based on certain features. The Pokemon world already has its own version of this, which is the egg groups, but egg groups are weirdly unspecific, especially when it comes to some of the larger categories. The field group, for instance, is the most common group, so it's not surprising that it came out as the #1 in Markiplier's pick a Pokemon. But the group itself is very random. There are mammals like Lop Bunny, but also reptiles like Arbok and birds like Blaziken. So as the group consists of many different types and appearances, it seemed pretty unhelpful from a data standpoint. Hence, I broke the data down into what each Pokemon looks like, adding a couple of extra categories like objects, ghosts, plants, and humans to cover all the bases. I initially thought that birds were going to be at the top because so many of his picks were just straight up birds like Swanna and Mandibuzz, but the data was actually a bit more spread out than I expected, with 4 groups all basically tied for the top slot: birds, bugs, mammals, and humanoids. I did try to take it a step further. Maybe it wasn't actual birds that came out on top, but maybe bird-like faces, pointed and sharp features. Think Pokemon like Zoroark with its elongated face, or Malamar, who's more like a squid but has a beak and is just very long and pointed. However, the data surprised me here, as 18 faces do fit the sharp, pointed description, but it was trounced by the 35 Pokemon he chose with rounded facial features, like Gardevoir, Sliggoo, Ledian, and of course, Magneton. Can't get much rounder than literal orbs. Now, obviously, we can't measure things like age when it comes to Pokemon, other than the odd Pokedex entry like Florges that talks about him being centuries old. Evolution, on the other hand, is measurable. How many evolutions in each Pokemon's evolutionary chain? How do they evolve? What stage within the evolutionary chain does Markiplier prefer? And it seems like he likes them mature. Of the 73 smashes, 42 were fully evolved forms, and 33 of those came from a 2-step evolution process. It's also worth noting that most of his choices were evolutions brought about by leveling rather than things like items, friendship, or trading. Weirdly, the results tell us what I think we can all agree on: Mark works hard, and he surrounds himself with people who also work hard. He puts a lot of effort into his content. He works out regularly. At least I thought he did.
Do you exercise often and stay active? No, not lately.
And so he appreciates a Pokemon in his life that's not gonna be there just for show, but instead is gonna be putting in the effort alongside him. But effort into what? What skills does he find particularly useful? Well, it turns out Mark wants a companion that stays close to him and can fend off attackers from a distance. One that he would never have to send directly out into dangerous territory. In short, he's a big fan of Pokemon with high special attack stats and low defense stats. To me, this translates to Mark being fiercely loyal and protective over a small handful of people, keeping them very close, keeping them safe, but maybe being distant himself to those outside of his inner circle. And just like that, we've come to the end of my data-driven journey. In all the data collection, these were the strongest and most interesting results, but what if we took it a step further? I know Mark reacted to all the Pokemon. His list is definitive of what he would and would not smash, but what if there was something he missed? One that in the flow of the video he said pass on without considering. What is the perfect Pokemon for Markiplier based on all the data that we just crunched? It's time I pull out the big guns, or as the man himself would say,
this is big brain time.
So after analyzing all our data, we can determine that Markiplier's perfect match needs to be about 4 foot 5 inches to 5 foot tall, 1.35 to 1.53 meters, and weigh in between 80 and 128 pounds, 36 to 58 kilos. They need to be a purple psychic type with high special attack and low physical defense. They need to be the fully evolved form of a 2-step evolutionary line, which is achieved via leveling up. They need to be in the field egg group, and more specifically have the appearance of a mammal animal, bird, human, or bug. And ideally, they got some strong, long legs that he can crush his head between. And so, plugging all that into the computer, we get, drumroll please, nothing. Mark didn't just pass on one by accident. All the features just don't exist in one package. But don't worry, theorists. I wasn't content to leave you or Mark empty-handed. Maybe there's a Pokemon that's close enough. One that ticks almost all the boxes, just not quite all of them. After digging around for several hours of my life that I'll never get back, I present to you the Pokemon that fits the bill, Mean Xiao. Height right in the pocket at 1.4 meters. Weight right there at 35.5 kilos. Mean Xiao isn't a psychic type, but it is definitely purple, has low physical defense, and is the final form of a two-stage evolution. And to round it all off, Mean Xiao is a mammal and part of the field egg group. And what's most interesting of all was Mark's response to Mean Xiao during his video.
That would definitely make me a furry pass.
He paused to think about his decision, but what ultimately made him pass was the idea of the social stigma, what people might perceive him to be if he were to make that choice. Otherwise, it seemed like he was all ready to say smash like he smashed Lot Bunny just moments before, asking the exact same thing.
Would this make me a furry if I said smash? Smash.
I guess what I and the data are collectively trying to say is, Mark, just go with your heart. Don't let society tell you what's right or wrong for you to smash. After all, Diamond and Pearl explicitly state that, quote, there once were people who married Pokemon. This was a normal thing because long ago, people and Pokemon were the same. So wanting to smash Pokemon isn't about being a furry. Instead, it's just about following the natural order, where Pokemon could become people and people could become Pokemon, and there was no judgment on either side. And you know, I think we could all learn a little lesson from that. And who knows, the Pokemon Company did just announce a brand new generation, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, so maybe this new generation will provide Mark with his perfect
It's funny that they said that, because I know it was a big thing with Typhlosion. That's insane. Hey, teach your own, teach your own.
Pokemon, but then again, that's an awfully long time to wait, so how about I take matters into my own hands? Well, not literally my hands, considering I have zero art skills whatsoever, but instead, I decided to hire an artist to design Mark's perfect Pokemon for us using all the attributes that we talked about today. One with a generally rounded face, but pointy features and sultry eyes. A purple mammal that would conceivably have psychic abilities, maybe some long, strong legs that could crush a man's head, as well as some sharp claws for good measure. A Pokemon that suggests femininity but without being overly sexualized. And all of it wrapped inside of a character design that, you know, could conceivably appear in a future Pokemon game, as opposed to something that was just designed for Mark's visual entertainment. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Markiplier's perfect Pokemon. I have to say, no matter what Mark thinks, I think this turned out great. You keep your leering male gaze elsewhere, my friend. I love this design. Not in a smashable way, though not necessarily not in a smashable way. I just think it's great. I feel like I should submit it to Game Freak. I think our artist crushed it. She did an incredible job. All of her links are going to be down in the description below, but fun's not over yet. This Pokemon doesn't have a name, so sound off in the comments what you think we should call this thing. I am fascinated to see what you guys come up with, which means that there's only one thing left for you to smash, and that's the subscribe button. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. And hey, if you're looking for more to watch, we've actually got a couple of other theories about Markiplier that are, slightly more serious than this one. One looking into the Markiplier connected universe, which is going to be important with In Space coming up soon. And one about the secret messages that are hidden inside the channel that shall not be named. Unis Honest. Can't have your theory proved wrong if the evidence no longer exists, am I right? Anyway, those two links are on screen right now, so check them out if you enjoyed this one. Subscribe, because you know we're going to be covering In Space with Markiplier when that comes out. And I'll catch you all next week.
Planet Fitness is here for you every step of the way. We've got your back, your arms, even your legs. Get moving at the Judgment-Free Zone.
This is a Pokemon. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a picture of Nurse Joy, one of the most famous, most beloved characters to come out of the Pokemon anime. I mean, this is a character who dates back to like episode 2 of the series, so she's been kicking around for a long time. And sure, she looks like a human, talks like a human, behaves like a human, but by the end of this video, you're gonna be convinced that Nurse Joy is in fact a fully catchable Pokemon. Roll that intro! Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that wants you to tap that subscribe button like you're trying to skip through some NPC dialogue. Also, as we kick things off here, it's worth mentioning that today is actually a double feature for all you Poke fans. Right now, over on Food Theory, I'm actually analyzing what Pokemon humans in the game universe are most likely to eat. Are they devouring Kabutops kebabs, Snorlax sausage, maybe some Krabby Patties? Not those. Those! It is literal Pokemania over here, friends, so once you've watched this one, make sure you click on over and check out that one too. The results of that video are, surprising, to say the least. But on to today's Game Theory. While we were all busy worrying about how old Ash really is or whether Ditto's related to Mewtwo, Nurse Joy has been the anime's secret hiding in plain sight for the last 2.5 decades. As a brief recap for those of you who are unaware, Nurse Joy is the character responsible for running all the Poke Centers of the anime universe. And over in the game world, she appears in both Pokemon Yellow as well as Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which is how I'm justifying this one being a game theory. If you speak to any Pokemon fan and ask them to describe Nurse Joy, I have no doubt that you'll get an immediate and detailed response. Much like Ash, Misty, and Brock, Nurse Joy is just one of those iconic characters with an iconic look. Pink and white nurse's outfit, blue eyes, and striking pink hair that curls in the front and forms 2 large hoops in the back. Like I said, simply iconic. There isn't a single other character that looks anything like Nurse Joy, except for, well, you know, all the other Nurse Joys. You see, Nurse Joy isn't just one character, but in fact hundreds, thousands, all identical and all running various Pokemon centers throughout the Pokemon world. In the meta sense, this is obviously meant to be a joke about how games often put an identical healer character in all the towns that you visit. But the in-universe lore explanation is that they're all related to each other. It's something that we hear as early as episode 2. While Team Rocket is busy destroying the Pokemon Center, Nurse Joy is transferring all the Pokemon there over to Pewter City. We see another Nurse Joy on the other end of the video call explaining that all the Pokemon arrived safely, to which Viridian's Nurse Joy replies,
Thanks, sis.
So they're sisters. All of them are sisters? Well, not entirely. When visiting the Orange Islands, Ash and company encounter a Nurse Joy who claims to be
The second cousin of the sister-in-law of the Joy in Saffron City.
and that's kind of an explanation, I guess? Just because you're related doesn't mean that you're gonna look this much alike, especially when you're dealing with different parents in different parts of the world. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know what makes a whole lot more sense? That they're all Pokemon. In the Pokemon world, identical children is actually the norm, not for humans, but for Pokemon. Look at this army of Pikachus, this flock of Pidgeys, Ash's Charmander versus Richie's Charmander. They are practically interchangeable. Every Chansey in every Poke Center in pretty much every episode, they all look the same. And if Nurse Joy was also a Pokemon, her legion of identical family members would make much more sense. But you know that I wouldn't be making this episode if that was all the evidence I have. That, my friends, is just the start. The thesis. By the end of today's episode, you're gonna be convinced that Nurse Joy should be getting an entry of her own into the National Dex. First, I want to point out that not only are all Nurse Joys practically identical, they're also all female. This would be a weird, highly improbable event for humans, but for Pokemon, it's actually the expected outcome. In episode 28 of the Diamond and Pearl series, we meet Paige and Marnie, 2 daughters of a Nurse Joy, which, actually reveals Joy to be their last name rather than the first name. Never really thought about that one. Anyway, Paige and Marnie Joy. Notice anything unusual about these two? They're identical to their mother. We even see their father, Karsten, in this episode, and, yeah, doesn't look like anyone took a dip in that gene pool. Normally, when you have a child, that child shares half their genetic makeup with the mother and half with the father, resulting in a look that's roughly a combination of the two. With Nurse Joy's kids, though, that's clearly not the case. And guess where else we see this happen? In Pokemon species. Back in Gen 2 of the games, we were introduced to Pokemon breeding, and when you breed 2 Pokemon together, the baby will always be the same species as their mother. Not only that, but the babies will look just like a smaller version of their parents. I mean, look at that little guy. Oh, how cute is he? Oh, you're so cute. Yes, you are. Oh, you were so cute until you got retconned by Pichu. Yes, you did. Sorry, where was I? Oh, yeah. So if Nurse Joy was, in fact, a Pokemon, we would expect all of her children, regardless of the father, to be mini versions of Nurse Joy, which, go figure, is exactly what we see in the anime. Instead of it being a statistical improbability, it actually would be the expected result. And, like I alluded to earlier, it also explains explains both kids being female. The introduction of breeding in Gen 2 also brought with it the introduction of biological sex, because Nidoran male and female from Gen 1 didn't count, apparently. And as you would expect, most Pokemon have both male and female variants, but there are a few species that are only one sex, all entirely male or all entirely female. All female Pokemon include the likes of Jinx, Kangaskhan, and wouldn't you know it, Chansey, Nurse Joy's ever-faithful medical assistant. So with Nurse Joy's all being female, she's either the luckiest genetic coin flipper ever, or the much more likely scenario, she's actually a species of Pokemon that just doesn't have a male counterpart. In other words, the way Nurse Joy's look and the way they reproduce all align closer to Pokemon than they do with humans. But obviously there are some exceptions, right? Brock, the anime's biggest Nurse Joy expert, has the ability to notice slight differences between them. And yeah, there are also slight variations within Pokemon species, like between Ash's Pikachu and Richie's Pikachu. This would explain the small differences that you see between different Nurse Joys. But then, what about this? Nurse Joys that are different in more than just their eyelash length, like we see in Black and White and Sun and Moon. Well, they're shiny and regional variants of the Nurse Joy Pokemon. Back in Gen 7, the Hawaii-based Sun and Moon games introduced a new Pokemon mechanic, regional variants, where Pokemon that have lived in certain environments for a long period of time have evolved to adapt to their new surroundings. The Red Fox Vulpix is now found up in a snowy mountain, so he becomes a snow fox. Executor grows into a tall palm tree like on island shorelines, unlike their inland counterparts who are stumpy because they don't get enough sun. And I propose to you that some of these different looking Nurse Joys actually function in the same way. Case in point, in the Orange Islands, Ash and company encounter a Nurse Joy that looks identical to the mainland Nurse Joys that we've come to know, except there's one major difference. Her skin is noticeably more tanned. Now, the show tries to explain this as a natural tan because she's on an archipelago, but Sun and Moon's Nurse Joys live in yet another tropical environment, but they're as pasty and pale as I am. So if one island's Nurse Joy is tan and another island's Nurse Joy isn't, then what's the difference? Well, maybe she's just a shiny Pokemon. Shiny Pokemon have been around since Gen 2 and basically look identical to the rest of their species, but with one key difference: their color palette. They're also incredibly rare, which is why this is the only shiny form of Nurse Joy that we've ever seen in the entire series. So by her being a Pokemon, the looks are explained, the kids are explained, the variants are explained. What I haven't explained is, you know, pretty much everything else, like the fact that she's a human who talks. She looks and speaks like a normal human using regular words and sentences rather than going around shouting her name in everyone's face. And admittedly, it'd be weird if all of a sudden she just started repeating Nurse Joy, Nurse Joy to all the trainers coming in for a quick heal. But the anime actually gives us our counterexample in the form of Team Rocket's Meowth, living proof that Pokemon have the power to evolve differently when they put their minds to it. For those of you who aren't aware, Meowth in the anime physically manipulated his body to walk on two legs. He even taught himself how to speak English, and with a Brooklyn accent no less, all to try and make himself more appealing to the love of his life, Meowsy. Why? Because she explicitly told him that she preferred humans.
You'll never be human, so just forget about me.
So this tells us that Pokemon have the ability to speak clear and articulate English, if they want it. But it certainly doesn't explain the other elephant in the room, the fact that she looks human. No amount of willpower is gonna turn Meowth into something that doesn't look like a cat. And that seems to be the deal breaker for today's theory. She can have all the identical siblings and tiny female versions of herself that she wants. She can't be a Pokemon because she doesn't look like a Pokemon. Theory busted. Or so you might think. The actual explanation for that lies in the past, both for Pokemon and for this channel. Now, first, I'd like to call out the fact that humanoid Pokemon do exist. Jinx, Mr. Mime, the Machop family, all of them are like an evolutionary stone's throw away from clocking in for a 9 to 5 and settling down in the suburbs. But we don't even have to extrapolate that far. All we have to do is for a long time. This is a Pokemon. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a picture of Nurse Joy, one of the most famous, most beloved characters to come out of the Pokemon anime. I mean, this is a character who dates back to like episode 2 of the series, so she's been kicking around for a long time. And sure, she looks like a human, talks like a human, behaves like a human, but by the end of this video, you're gonna be convinced that Nurse Joy is in fact a fully catchable Pokemon. Roll that intro! Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that wants you to tap that subscribe button like you're trying to skip through some NPC dialogue. Also, as we kick things off here, it's worth mentioning that today is actually a double feature for all you Poke fans. Right now, over on Food Theory, I'm actually analyzing what Pokemon humans in the game universe are most likely to eat. Are they devouring Kabutops kebabs, Snorlax sausage, maybe some Krabby Patties? Not those. Those! It is literal Pokemania over here, friends, so once you've watched this one, make sure you click on over and check out that one too. The results of that video are, surprising, to say the least. But on to today's game theory. While we were all busy worrying about how old Ash really is or whether Ditto's related to Mewtwo, Nurse Joy has been the anime's secret hiding in plain sight for the last 2.5 decades. As a brief recap for those of you who are unaware, Nurse Joy is the character responsible for running all the Poke Centers of the anime universe. And over in the game world, she appears in both Pokemon Yellow as well as Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which is how I'm justifying this one being a game theory. If you speak to any Pokemon fan and ask them to describe Nurse Joy, I have no doubt that you'll get an immediate and detailed response. Much like Ash, Misty, and Brock, Nurse Joy is just one of those iconic characters with an iconic look. Pink and white nurse's outfit, blue eyes, and striking pink hair that curls in the front and forms 2 large hoops in the back. Like I said, simply iconic. There isn't a single other character that looks anything like Nurse Joy, except for, well, you know, all the other Nurse Joys. You see, Nurse Joy isn't just one character, but in fact hundreds, thousands, all identical and all running various Pokemon centers throughout the Pokemon world. In the meta sense, this is obviously meant to be a joke about how games often put an identical healer character in all the towns that you visit. But the in-universe lore explanation is that they're all related to each other. It's something that we hear as early as episode 2. While Team Rocket is busy destroying the Pokemon Center, Nurse Joy is transferring all the Pokemon there over to Pewter City. We see another Nurse Joy on the other end of the video call explaining that all the Pokemon arrived safely, to which Viridian's Nurse Joy replies,
Thanks, sis.
so they're sisters. All of them are sisters? Well, not entirely. When visiting the Orange Islands, Ash and company encounter a Nurse Joy who claims to be
The second cousin of the sister-in-law of the Joy in Saffron City.
and that's kind of an explanation, I guess? Just because you're related doesn't mean that you're gonna look this much alike, especially when you're dealing with different parents in different parts of the world. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know what makes a whole lot more sense? That they're all Pokemon. In the Pokemon world, identical children is actually the norm, not for humans, but for Pokemon. Look at this army of Pikachus, this flock of Pidgeys, Ash's Charmander versus Richie's Charmander. They are practically interchangeable. Every Chansey in every Poke Center in pretty much every episode, they all look the same. And if Nurse Joy was also a Pokemon, her legion of identical family members would make much more sense. But you know that I wouldn't be making this episode if that was all the evidence I have. That, my friends, is just the start. The thesis. By the end of today's episode, you're gonna be convinced that Nurse Joy should be getting an entry of her own into the National Dex. First, I want to point out that not only are all Nurse Joys practically identical, they're also all female. This would be a weird, highly improbable event for humans, but for Pokemon, it's actually the expected outcome. In episode 28 of the Diamond and Pearl series, we meet Paige and Marnie, 2 daughters of a Nurse Joy, which, actually reveals Joy to be their last name rather than the first name. Never really thought about that one. Anyway, Paige and Marnie Joy. Notice anything unusual about these two? They're identical to their mother. We even see their father, Karsten, in this episode, and, yeah, doesn't look like anyone took a dip in that gene pool. Normally, when you have a child, that child shares half their genetic makeup with the mother and half with the father, resulting in a look that's roughly a combination of the two. With Nurse Joy's kids, though, that's clearly not the case. And guess where else we see this happen? In Pokemon species. Back in Gen 2 of the games, we were introduced to Pokemon breeding, and when you breed 2 Pokemon together, the baby will always be the same species as their mother. Not only that, but the babies will look just like a smaller version of their parents. I mean, look at that little guy. Oh, how cute is he? Oh, you're so cute. Yes, you are. Oh, you were so cute until you got retconned by Pichu. Yes, you did. Sorry, where was I? Oh, yeah. So if Nurse Joy was, in fact, a Pokemon, we would expect all of her children, regardless of the father, to be mini versions of Nurse Joy, which, go figure, is exactly what we see in the anime. Instead of it being a statistical improbability, it actually would be the expected result. And, like I alluded to earlier, it also explains both kids being female. The introduction of breeding in Gen 2 also brought with it the introduction of biological sex, because Nidoran male and female from Gen 1 didn't count, apparently. And as you would expect, most Pokemon have both male and female variants, but there are a few species that are only one sex, all entirely male or all entirely female. All female Pokemon include the likes of Jinx, Kangaskhan, and wouldn't you know it, Chansey, Nurse Joy's ever-faithful medical assistant. So So with Nurse Joy's all being female, she's either the luckiest genetic coin flipper ever, or the much more likely scenario, she's actually a species of Pokemon that just doesn't have a male counterpart. In other words, the way Nurse Joy's look and the way they reproduce all align closer to Pokemon than they do with humans. But obviously there are some exceptions, right? Brock, the anime's biggest Nurse Joy expert, has the ability to notice slight differences between them. And yeah, there are also slight variations within Pokemon species, like between Ash's Pikachu and Richie's Pikachu. This would explain the small differences that you see between different Nurse Joys. But then, what about this? Nurse Joys that are different in more than just their eyelash length, like we see in Black and White and Sun and Moon. Well, they're shiny and regional variants of the Nurse Joy Pokemon. Back in Gen 7, the Hawaii-based Sun and Moon games introduced a new Pokemon mechanic, regional variants, where Pokemon that have lived in certain environments for a long period of time have evolved to adapt to their new surroundings. The Red Fox Vulpix is now found up in a snowy mountain, so he becomes a snow fox. Executor grows into a tall palm tree like on island shorelines, unlike their inland counterparts who are stumpy because they don't get enough sun. And I propose to you that some of these different looking Nurse Joys actually function in the same way. Case in point, in the Orange Islands, Ash and company encounter a Nurse Joy that looks identical to the mainland Nurse Joys that we've come to know, except there's one major difference. Her skin is noticeably more tanned. Now, the show tries to explain this as a natural tan because she's on an archipelago, but Sun and Moon's Nurse Joys live in yet another tropical environment, but they're as pasty and pale as I am. So if one island's Nurse Joy is tan and another island's Nurse Joy isn't, then what's the difference? Well, maybe she's just a shiny Pokemon. Shiny Pokemon have been around since Gen 2 and basically look identical to the rest of their species, but with one key difference: their color palette. They're also incredibly rare, which is why this is the only shiny form of Nurse Joy that we've ever seen in the entire series. So by her being a Pokemon, the looks are explained, the kids are explained, the variants are explained. What I haven't explained is, you know, pretty much everything else, like the fact that she's a human who talks. She looks and speaks like a normal human using regular words and sentences rather than going around shouting her name in everyone's face. And admittedly, it'd be weird if all of a sudden she just started repeating Nurse Joy, Nurse Joy to all the trainers coming in for a quick heal. But the anime actually gives us our counterexample in the form of Team Rocket's Meowth, living proof that Pokemon have the power to evolve differently when they put their minds to it. For those of you who aren't aware, Meowth in the anime physically manipulated his body to walk on two legs. He even taught himself how to speak English, and with a Brooklyn accent no less, all to try and make himself more appealing to the love of his life, Meowsy. Why? Because she explicitly told him that she preferred humans.
You'll never be human, so just forget about me.
So this tells us that Pokemon have the ability to speak clear and articulate English, if they want it. But it certainly doesn't explain the other elephant in the room, the fact that she looks human. No amount of willpower is gonna turn Meowth into something that doesn't look like a cat. And that seems to be the deal breaker for today's theory. She can have all the identical siblings and tiny female versions of herself that she wants. She can't be a Pokemon because she doesn't look like a Pokemon. Theory busted. Or so you might think. The actual explanation for that lies in the past, both for Pokemon and for this channel. Now, first, I'd like to call out the fact that humanoid Pokemon do exist. Jinx, Mr. Mime, the Machop family, all of them are like an evolutionary stone's throw away from clocking in for a 9 to 5 and settling down in the suburbs. But we don't even have to extrapolate that far. All we have to do is turn to the lore. 7 years ago, I covered a theory about how Pokemon and people used to be one and the same. We've come a long way since then and gained a lot of new subscribers, so rather than forcing you to go back and watch the cringe that is that video, seriously, please do not go and watch that one. I'll instead just recap what you need to know here. Firstly, we have various Pokedex entries, almighty sources of knowledge throughout the Pokemon world, which draw a direct connection between humans and Pokemon. For example, Frostlass's entry from Pokemon Sun reads,
The soul of a woman lost on a snowy mountain possessed an icicle, becoming this Pokemon.
And that's just the tip of the human-shaped iceberg. Where Frostlass, as well as other Pokemon like Yamask and Phantump, are spirits of humans, Kadabra's entry is something else entirely. Quote from Pokemon Fire Red's Pokedex,
It happened one morning. A boy with extrasensory powers awoke in bed, transformed into Kadabra.
Here we have explicit proof of people turning into Pokemon. But what we need now is the flip of that. We need Pokemon turning into people. And for that, the Diamond and Pearl games have us covered. You see, in Kanalave City, there's a library. And in that library are a number of books that speak to Pokemon myths and folklore. Number 3 carries the particularly interesting quote, There once were Pokemon that became very close to humans. There once were humans and Pokemon that ate together at the same table. It was a time when there existed no differences to distinguish the two. They ate together at the same table, you say? Sure, sounds like one of those ye olde euphemisms to me. But the fun doesn't stop there. If you look online and find the original Japanese for these, they can literally be translated to, quote, there once were Pokemon that married people. There once were people that married Pokemon. This was a normal thing because long ago, people and Pokemon were the same. Pokemon and humans looking and acting the same, marrying one another? Like maybe perhaps a nurse, Pokemon Joy, marrying the husband, human Karsten? But the final piece of evidence here is from Folktale 2. Quote, here lived a Pokemon in a forest. In the forest, the Pokemon shed its hide to sleep as a human. I mean, this right here, this outright shows us that not only were Pokemon and humans one and the same, but that Pokemon had the ability to become people. 7 years ago, we theorized that this was because of the human mind, the thing that differentiates us from animals. Certain Pokemon would choose to give up their special powers for the ability to grow mentally, to learn, to communicate. And honestly, I think that this is exactly what happened to the species of Pokemon we now know as Nurse Joy. And better yet, I think I know the Pokemon that chose to evolve into her. Let's paint a picture, shall we? Throughout the anime, Nurse Joy has had a couple of Pokemon companions, but none is more iconic than Chansey. And it makes a lot of sense for Chansey to be the one there to support Nurse Joy. Quote from Platinum's Pokedex entry,
a kindly Pokemon that lays highly nutritious eggs and shares them with injured Pokemon or people.
Its evolved form Blissey actually is very similar.
It has a very compassionate nature. If it sees a sick Pokemon, it will nurse the sufferer back to health.
This line of Pokemon is well documented as being caregivers and healers. They would do anything to help a Pokemon or a person. Chansey also has some interesting design features that are worth pointing out. A simple line smile, tall and thin blue eyes, that iconic pink hair, which, kinda matches the iconic design of that favorite human nurse of ours. And also, when it evolves into Blissey, that hair becomes curly, just like that certain nurse we all know and love. But why? Why would Chansey ever need to evolve into a human form? Well, think about it this way. These folktales talk of a world from long ago, when people and Pokemon were the same, but that's clearly no longer the case. Back in those days when Pokemon were all wild and they lived in harmony with people, Chansey could easily help everyone that she came across. But now that Pokemon are just seen as animals, lesser than humans, well, it makes it very hard for Chansey to help both humans and Pokemon. I mean, how would you feel if you walked to your local doctor and found a dog sitting there waiting to give you a shot? Making it even more complicated, Pokemon and people don't just live segregated, people now capture, train, and battle Pokemon for sport. Where before Chansey may have come across a sick Pokemon that had eaten the wrong kind of berry or something, now there are broken and injured Pokemon fainting left, right, and center. But while they're in the control of humans, Chansey can't get anywhere close to helping them. A human, though, would have the chance. So, Chansey did the only thing it could. Over time, it evolved to act like a human, to speak like a human, just like Meowth did, but it took it one step further. It began to look like a human. And with the understanding and respect from humans, she was able to build a global hospital empire that would allow Chansey to continue doing the thing that she loved most, caring for both Pokemon and their trainers, literally bringing some joy to everyone in the world. So, there you have it, friends, the secret final evolution of Chansey to the human that we've all known and loved for decades, Nurse Joy. Kinda makes you wonder about Officer Jenny now, doesn't it? Another day, friends, another day. But hey, that's just a theory. One of two theories all about the Pokemon universe that you can watch right now. For years, people have been asking me about whether people eat Pokemon and which would be the tastiest. But over on Food Theory today, I've actually gone one better to tell you the breakdown of the entire food economy of the Pokeverse. Will your Appleton be an appetizer? Your Doduo be dinner? If you want to see which Pokemon would literally be on the chopping block, click the link that you see on screen right now. If you liked this video, you are gonna love that one over there. Thanks for your time, and as always, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Cadbury Dairy Milk. Thick chunks of creamy chocolate that taste even better when shared.
You mastered your mind. And all the while, you were on the train home. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen.
Vika?
Did we get him? I think we got him. Finally, after 5 whole seasons of anime, 276 episodes chasing this one Pikachu across Kanto, Johto, and the Orange Islands, we finally got him. That's a lot of episodes, Dan.
I think it's worth a celebration. Can we do the thing, please? Can we?
Yes, I think we can do the thing.
Yeah!
Prepare for trouble.
And make it double.
To protect the world from devastation.
To unite all peoples within our nation.
To denounce the evils of truth and love.
To extend our reach to the stars above.
Matt Pat.
Dan.
Team Theorist blasts off at the speed of light.
Surrender now or prepare to fight.
Meow! That's a really weak Pikachu. You two bozos realize he's only level 40.
What? But how can it be? We've covered nearly 300 episodes.
And 5 movies.
I don't know, maybe things pick up in the next 300?
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the level 99 pain in the butt to any developers out there that don't think through the details of their fictional universe. Case in point, the Pokemon anime. Last episode, we were presented with a problem. Season 14, Episode 1, the start of the Black and White arc. Pikachu is pitted against a trainer's brand new level 5 Snivy and loses. And not just loses, after landing one blow, Pikachu gets hit twice by Snivy and faints. It is a blowout, and it is absurd. At this point in the series, Ash's adventures have covered 600 episodes and 13 movies. They've been across 5 regions with a grand total of 52 badges. Like, it should not be physically possible for that loss to have occurred. Literally running the numbers, it should not have happened. And so last time we started off on an impossible mission, actually calculating Pikachu's real level at the time of the Snivy battle to show how impossible Pikachu's defeat here would be. And yeah, sure, mechanics don't fully translate over into the anime, etc., but we can roughly translate what we know from the games into the anime to get a general sense of how strong Pikachu should be at this point in his adventure. But in order to do that, we had to watch the show. Literally every episode front to back, because guess what, friends? Prior to our research, there was no full and complete list of every battle Pikachu fights in the anime. Well, as our bleeding eyes can attest to, there is now. Long story short, I never want to watch Brock awkwardly leering at women ever again. Last episode, we were able to get up through the end of the Johto arc. At the start of Season 6, 276 episodes in, Pikachu was standing at a shockingly low level of 40. But when you actually look at the data, it makes sense. What we found while watching was that he doesn't fight as much as you might think in the anime. Sure, Pikachu regularly blasts off Team Rocket, but for engaging in actual battles against other mons that can give him experience, Pikachu averages between 20 and 25 fights per arc, which isn't a whole lot relative to the number of episodes. Instead, he's usually sidelined for whatever shiny new Pokemon the anime wants to promote from that generation, giving him limited opportunities to actually get stronger. So just how powerful is Pikachu? Well, we've got another 324 episodes and 8 movies to cover, and I am determined that this will not be a 3-parter, so let's just get going. So much more. Always. You don't have to rub it in, theme of Pokemon Advanced. You don't have to rub it in. As we get started, a few quick reminders. To find the experience of battling Pokemon, if they're wild, I'm taking the route they're on and using the median level number for that route. For trainer battles, I'm instead using the mean level or average level for all the trainers on that route, adding them all up and then dividing by the number of trainers. With gym leaders and Team Rocket appearances, I'm just using the level of those Pokemon directly from the games. Here's the equation we're putting all that information into, which I went into in much greater detail last time. And lastly, we're taking Pikachu's total experience and finding the cube root because Pikachu is part of the medium fast EXP category. And if you have any questions about battles or the facts and figures that I use, a link to the full document is in the description below this video, right next to that subscribe button, go figure, which if you haven't pushed yet, you probably should, because let's face it, no other person on earth is gonna take such a dumb question so seriously. And you clicked on the video, so clearly you're at least moderately interested in getting the answers to these sorts of things. So come on, join the community of theorists already. 46% of you aren't subscribed, right? Isn't that the thing I'm supposed to say? Which brings us to the next stop on our journey, Hoenn. And this is where things really get interesting. You see, there's a theory online written by Reddit user Joe's Cool that claims that Pikachu's level resets at the start of every other region, not including the Orange Islands. To quote from that original theory, in the final Johto episode Hoenn alone, James fires up a giant magnet which causes a bunch of stuff to come up and whack Ash, knocking him out. In addition addition, Pikachu gets trapped onto the magnet and his electricity is drained. These two events cause Ash to lose part of his memory and Pikachu to lose the power it gained through its journey. This explains why Ash and Pikachu seem to reset. They both get caught up in an accident that seriously hurts them. And this is a great theory that explains a lot. Or at least it would be if the episodes didn't directly contradict all of it. And again, I know this because I gotta watch them all to do the theory. Sure, we see Pikachu get overcharged at the end of Johto.
Pikachu!
Adventures start with a hybrid you can depend on. But where those adventures end up, that depends on you. Meet the CR-V Touring Hybrid. In stock now.
Pikachu! You're burning up! You must have a bad fever!
But the very next episode, the start of Hoenn, we're told multiple times that Pikachu is able to recover back to his normal state.
Pikachu's output is incredible! It appears that Pikachu's electricity pressure has reached normal levels.
And all of this is without even mentioning the fact that Ash's memory seems completely unaffected by all of it. A similar thing happens in the Shadow of Zekrom, the first episode of the Black and White series. In this episode, Pikachu and Ash get caught up in a thundercloud, and Pikachu gets overloaded by electricity from Zekrom.
Pikachu was completely enveloped inside a powerful electric field. All that electrical energy Pikachu absorbed from the thunderstorm was too much.
And that would explain why Pikachu's not
Thank you
able
very
to use
much.
any electric type
I'll be right
moves.
back. I
And
just have
while it
to
does
get some
certainly
water.
seem to hamper him temporarily, Pikachu's
Oh, yeah,
level
it's-
again
thank you.
doesn't
We're
actually
getting closer.
reset,
We're almost
as
done.
even without electricity, he's still
The line
able to
artwork.
use advanced moves like Iron Tail that, as we see earlier in the anime, Pikachu had trouble actually learning. It's also worth noting that Pikachu fully recovers one episode later, and also Pikachu getting overcharged is a very common occurrence throughout the series, with no long-term consequences to his power levels. Anyway, all that's to say that there isn't solid evidence of levels getting reset here. Plus, it would ruin the fun of figuring out what the big number is at the end of this thing. So, Hoenn, the playable region from Ruby, Sapphire, and later Emerald. This region spans 4 whole seasons of the anime, and Ash returns to using Pikachu as his primary Pokemon, which means a lot more battles for him. Things start off simple enough, just a basic journey following along the path of the games, but midway through, things get a little funny as Season 8 shifts to follow more closely with Pokemon Emerald in order to coincide with that game's release. You can tell this in Season 8, Episode 18 with the introduction of Juan, who's the 8th gym leader in Emerald as opposed to Wallace from Ruby and Sapphire. The anime also includes the Battle Frontier, which is only present in Pokemon Emerald. In the end, there were 47 total victories in the region for Pikachu, nearly double any of the previous arcs. Rather than read all that information out, which would be dumb and long and tedious and no one wants to hear it, I'm just gonna list them here with the episode number, route, and level. Yeah, told you there was a lot. And like I said, the Google Doc will be linked down in the description below, so if you really want to dig in, you can find all the information down there. Anyway, the main place to stop is right about meow. This is where Ash goes to the Battle Frontier and faces off against the Frontier Brains. Now, how the Battle Frontier works in Pokemon Emerald is that there are 2 categories of gameplay, Level 50 and Open Level. Level 50 is the first class for Pokemon level 50 or below, and all the opponent Pokemon will be at level 50 themselves, whereas Open Level means any Pokemon over level 50 can enter, and the opponent's Pokemon will match your highest level Pokemon. Fortunately for us, at this point in the series, Pikachu actually caps in at 47, so he only qualifies for the level 50 mode, meaning that all the Frontier Brain Pokemon are gonna level at 50. I love it when things just work out. After beating the Brains, he only gains himself 1 level, and so Pikachu finishes off the Hoenn region at level 48. Next up, Sinnoh, and this region, this region. Hoenn was a breeze, nothing complicated, easy to follow, but I knew it was too good to be true. Sinnoh was determined to break me. Another 4-season region, another 49 battles, which you can see here. But the worst part, the worst part was Team Rocket. Curse you, Jesse and James! In the immortal words of Markiplier, it's big brain time. So the first Pokemon Pikachu encounters in the Sinnoh region is Dawn's new Piplup. That's easy enough, it's level 5, all starter Pokemon are. However, in that first episode, Pikachu also encounters Meowth, Mime Jr., and Wobbuffet from Team Rocket. He of course makes quick work of them, but the issue is that we have very little to go on for the levels. Mime Jr. is probably the least complicated, as we see him use the move Mimic in episode 17 of season 9. We also know that move-based evolution is considered important within the Pokemon anime universe, as later in Diamond and Pearl, Apom learns Double Hit and soon after evolves into Ambipom. So even though time has passed since Mime Jr. used Mimic, he can't have leveled up, otherwise otherwise he would have evolved into Mr. Mime, meaning Mime Jr. here in this battle is sitting at level 32. Wobbuffet's a little harder to figure out, but we know that he was traded back on Route 34 of the Johto region, which would have made him at about level 11. So going on the idea that he's traveled 2 regions and taking into account Pikachu's level gain, I put him at level 40. The hardest in this instance, though, is Meowth. Last time we saw him lose a battle was in Kanto, where I estimated his level to be 31. It would be safe to assume that he grew at the same rate as Arbok and Weezing until they were released, which means by this point I've estimated Meowth to be level 70, which I know seems high, but once again, it's not gonna make all that big of a difference in the final tally. The last anomaly in this region is the battle tower that Ash partakes in during his time back in Twin Leaf Town, episode 36 of season 12. The battle tower in Diamond and Pearl is slightly different to the battle frontier in that the only option is level 50, with all Pokemon being dropped to that level in your party regardless of their actual level. As this throws off a lot of calculations, I instead opted for the open level approach from the battle frontier, making his opponents the same level as Pikachu, which at this point is 58. And now, we're finally here. After Pikachu fights a few more Pokemon, we are finally in the Unova region. This is once again where the series tries to do a soft reboot by trying to make Ash and Pikachu seem like a new team.
5 minutes ago, she'd never play piano. Can you believe she's been playing 1 week? And that's just 2 months. And him, 6 months playing with the Ridley method. And that's 1 year of playing. This is how fast you can learn the piano with the Ridley method, a new way that allows you to master the piano faster and easier than traditional methods, so that you can get to the fun of playing piano right now. If you take traditional piano lessons or watch YouTube videos or use apps, it could take you 10 or 15 years to master the piano. Learning piano takes forever! My name is Stephen Ridley, and I've been a concert pianist for more than 10 years. But more importantly, I've helped more than 1 million students learn the piano with this new method.
I was dreaming my whole life that I want to learn on piano. I didn't expect that it can be that fast.
I'm very happy because now I'm writing my own songs, and I felt so empowered and supported.
So after about 3 weeks of practice, but I can play whatever I want.
Every day for me is a win because I get faster and faster and faster. It's been the greatest thing ever.
So, to get you started, I've created a free online piano masterclass. To participate, it's super easy. Just click the link below, enter your name and email, and we'll send you a direct link. And if you don't have a piano right now, I'm gonna give away a $4,000 piano for free to one attendee during the event. You don't need to practice for months or years to have fun playing the piano. With this new method, you can start playing your favorite songs today. So, click the link below, and I'll see you there. See you there!
However, we know that this is absolutely 100% not true. Ash retains all of his memories of the journey thus far. When Dawn rejoins the team, we get this interaction.
Alright, I am back.
And later, when Dawn specifically asks about Brock cooking for her and Ash on the journey, we also know that Pikachu retains all the moves that he's learned up to this point, like Iron Tail, which a new Pokemon trainer is unlikely to have taught a brand new Pikachu. Even the show only half-heartedly adheres to its own reboot, as in that very same episode we get this. Hard to say Pikachu reverted back to level 5 when he's actively being called the world's most powerful Pikachu. So with all that being said, it means we're here. We finally arrived at that big final number. Pikachu's level in his battle against Snivy. What is he? Level 90? 100? 200? Well, strap in because that number is, after compiling all 148 Pikachu battles across 600 plus episodes and doing really elaborate calculations to get there, drumroll please, Pikachu's final level is 61. Kinda underwhelming, right? Like, he's traversed 5 whole regions. Most people are getting close to that level after doing a single run through a game. Even if you didn't like some of my estimations for Team Rocket battles, if we remove them entirely from the equation, it would still only put Pikachu at level 59. Any way you slice it, he's not as powerful as we all think he should be. I've seen forums of people online saying it must be 100. If the levels went over 100, he'd be like 1,000 at this point. But having sat down and painstakingly scrubbed through all the episodes, looking for every tiny detail, I can tell you definitively that that is not the case. He is like low 60s at best. So what's that mean for our battle against Snivy? Long story short, Snivy still should have been toast. As I mentioned at the start, Pikachu is the first to land a hit with a successful quick attack. To give Snivy the best possible chance, we're gonna assume that this is just the buffest level 5 you could possibly get, with an HP of 21 and defense of 12. And let's also say that Pikachu is my lower estimate of level 59. At that level, the lowest Pikachu's attack stat could be is 69, with Quick Attack's base power being 40 and the randomizer feature set to its lowest setting of 0.85, we can use the in-game equations to figure out that Pikachu's attack would do 95 damage, and 21 Snivy HP minus 95 damage equals negative 74. Snivy could be knocked out 3 more times with just that one hit. And to really round it off, let's just say that somehow Snivy did survive the quick attack. When it goes on the offensive, its attack and special attack stats are both 11. Pikachu's lowest possible stats here would be HP 110, defense 52, special defense 64. Let's also say the randomizer hits at its highest point, and both attacks are critical hits for Snivy, with Tackle having a base power of 50 and Leaf Tornado being 65. The most total damage that could be done would be 32 hit points. Pikachu would still have 78 HP remaining. So where does all this leave us? Well, I did it. I calculated what level Pikachu is, a task that no sane person has ever completed. I feel amazing and also very, very empty. This show is just painfully repetitive. Anyway, kudos to you, Ash. Sure, you lost against Snivy. You don't know that you have to weaken a Pokemon before catching it, and you didn't realize that bug Pokemon are weak against flying types, but you've managed to win against the Elite Four using a Pokemon that's half their level, and that's gotta account for something. So maybe you are better than everyone gives you credit for.
So is it a water type?
No, Ash, it's a grass type.
Never mind, still an idiot. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Thick, creamy, chocolatey. The delicious taste of Cadbury Dairy Milk.
It's been 3 years since I undertook the mammoth task of calculating Ash's age. 2 videos that drove me insane with days of research, cross-referencing, watching the show, but it was definitely worth it.
Got to.
What do you mean, that was nothing? I ripped my hair out researching that episode. Oh, wait, is that it? I barely felt a tingle. You've traveled to 8 different regions at this point? Surely you have to be stronger than oh, that's what the episode's about, isn't it? Hello Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory. I guess? Yeah, it's another one of those what channel should this be on episodes. Anyway, back in 2018, I did a theory that nearly broke me. I wanted to figure out how old Ash Ketchum from the Pokemon anime really was. And if you watched that theory, you'd know that it took a toll on me. Days and weeks of solid research and writing with details hidden in the craziest of places. But alas, dear theorists, that was just the warm-up. Today, we are going to be looking at the other biggest question people have about the Pokemon anime. What level is Ash's Pikachu? You see, what started me down this path was the first episode of Season 14, the start of the Pokemon Black and White or Best Wishes arc. In this episode, Ash challenges a trainer who's just received his first Pokemon from Professor Juniper, a Snivy. In this battle, Pikachu lands one hit on his opponent and receives 2 hits in return. But after the second hit, Pikachu faints. He just loses the battle. How? At this point, Ash and Pikachu have traveled to 5 different regions, earned themselves a total of 52 badges, and won against the toughest trainers, even literal gods. So that was it, friends. My theory brain went to work to figure out what level Pikachu would have to have been by the time he fought Snivy in that episode to prove definitively that there was literally no way that he could possibly lose. And to do it, I had to sit down and watch the preceding 651 episodes of the anime and 13 movies, which yes, are considered canon. I double checked. I had to watch every single one because guess what? All the battles that Pikachu appears in and makes a Pokemon faint in are not clearly marked off on any fan wiki in existence. Oh boy, this was a rough one. But I can tell you that my work was worth it because what I found at the end of my anime binge was shocking, to say the least. Pikachu was nowhere near the level that I or anyone else in the fandom currently thinks he should be at. So what level is Pikachu? Our epic Pokemon journey starts now. So obviously the answer we reach today is going to be our best approximation of his level. The anime timeline and geography don't really line up with the games perfectly, and we all know that they don't totally follow the same rules as the games.
Electric attacks won't work.
Hour 35, that's a personal best.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Pikachu the horn!
Smart move. Rhydon's horn acts just like a lightning rod.
As such, I needed to set some ground rules. We're only going to be counting battles that we see on screen. Pikachu has had to have fought in the battle, and the opponent has had to have fainted, usually shown by big spirals across their eyes. Or they have to have been deemed unable to battle by a referee. We also won't be counting every time Team Rocket blasts off again. There are, however, occasions where Team Rocket's Pokemon are shown to clearly faint prior to their blast off, and so those will be counted. We also won't be considering moves used as a sign of Pikachu leveling up. This is because the names of moves are sometimes used interchangeably, especially in the early seasons of English dub. They also have a habit of giving Pokemon moves that they can't physically learn, like Charmander using Skull Bash, a move that the Charmander family can never learn, or Pikachu learning the move Volt Tackle, a move that can only be obtained through breeding and not learned naturally. Now, for this theory, we're going to be using the flat rate EXP equation from the games, hence why this is a game theory, where the amount of EXP you earn is based off of the following factors. If the opponent is wild or owned by a trainer, if the winning Pokemon is with its original trainer, the base experience yield of that specific Pokemon, if the Pokemon is holding a lucky egg, the level of the fainted Pokemon, if an EXP point power is active, if the Pokemon has an affection rating of 2 and above, and if the winning Pokemon is past the level it should evolve. All of that then gets multiplied together and divided by 7, multiplied by an amount based on if the EXP share is on, which leaves you with an equation that looks a little something like this. Section T, E, P, V, and S are all going to be set to 1, as Ash is Pikachu's original owner, and the other items are not seen to be used. Variable V was only implemented in Gen 6, which we're not getting to today because we're stopping our calculation at that particular Snivy fight. Pikachu's affection, though, is an interesting one. It becomes 1.2 if the affection is above 2, which I believe happens around episode 30 onwards, as Pikachu there is shown to put aside his own feelings to help Ash get what he wants. So those are all the obvious and easy variables. The big challenge is figuring out the level of each and every losing Pokemon throughout every single one of the anime battles. For the sake of the theory, we use 2 ways to calculate this. If the Pokemon is wild, I took the route that they were on, or at least the route they should be on based on which cities they're traveling between, and from there I looked at the highest level Pokemon and lowest level Pokemon that you can find on said route. From there, I simply took the median number, or middle number. For example, on Route 1, the highest level is 7, but the lowest is 2, so the median level for that route is 5. For any trainer battles, I instead used the mean level, or average level for that route, adding them all up and dividing by the number of trainers. The exception to this was when gym leaders or Team Rocket used Pokemon that their in-game counterparts also use, in which case I just use the level from that Pokemon directly. The final factor is that we'll be calculating Pikachu's level by taking his total experience and finding the cube root of that number. This is because Pikachu is part of the medium fast EXP group, and so this is how the game calculates it. Alright, geez, enough table setting. Let's actually start the quest, shall we? Pikachu's adventure begins in the Kanto region, when Professor Oak gives him to Ash as his first Pokemon, meaning that we start with Pikachu at level 5, just like he does in Pokemon Yellow. In that first episode, Pikachu actually gets his first win, and it's an impressive one. Ash and Pikachu get chased by a flock of Spearow, which forces Pikachu to leap into the air and unleash an incredible thunder shock. Now, these Spearow would have been about level 5, considering that they're on Route 1. The most we see on screen at any given time is 46. So that right there gives us a nice healthy 1,905 EXP right off the bat, immediately jumping Pikachu to level 12 in the first episode alone. Things are looking good. Pikachu's victories after that first episode, though, become few and far between. Beating Brock's Geodude, a wild Squirtle in episode 12, Lieutenant Surge's Raichu, a wild Grimer in episode 29, and a trainer's Paris on episode 41. Though in this episode, we're going to assume that Paris is level 5 due to the story pointing out that he's particularly weak.
What a pathetic Paris.
At this point, we come to one of our first tricky calculations. Pikachu defeats Ash's Charmeleon in that same episode, episode 41, which on its own is fine, but Charmeleon only evolved the episode prior and will evolve again in just 2 episodes' time, not even appearing in the next episode. This means that we have very little to go off of what his level would be. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to assume that he's now level 26, right in the middle of Charmeleon's 2 evolutionary points. After this, Pikachu wins against a wild Dodrio in a hospital in episode 44, our first Team Rocket feint in episode 1 of season 2, then there's Blaine's Rhydon and a return of Jesse's Arbok in episode 6, a few more uneventful battles before Pikachu has an incredible victory against 3 Pokemon at the start of the first movie, then have a fight with a trainer's Marowak in season 2 episode 19, Pete's Arcanine in the 3rd round of the Pokemon League episode 22, and his final Kanto victory, Richie's Butterfree in the 4th round episode 25. So by the end of the Kanto region, Pikachu has won 21 battles and by my calculations is now level 30, which makes his victories that much more impressive, considering by the 4th round of the Pokemon League, your opponents are supposed to be in their high 50s. So I guess Ash is either smarter than we think or he's incredibly lucky. Either way, his luck soon runs out. He's defeated by Richie and Ash and Pikachu head on over to the Orange Islands. And this is where things go a little off the rails. See, the Orange Islands have never appeared in any Pokemon game. Why couldn't I have picked a simpler episode? It's okay, MatPat. Remember what the therapist said. Breathe in, breathe out. It's okay. I'm good. Let's get to it. The closest thing I could find to the Orange Islands was the Sevi Islands, introduced in Fire Red and Leaf Green, which, fun fact, by the way, I never thought about this when I was actually playing the games, but it finally clicked as I was researching for this episode. Sevi, V-I-I, that's 7 in Roman numerals, but it's also a pun. See, Sev is short for 7, and then the 2 I's at the end represent the 2 other islands. Mind explosion! Anyway, the Sevi Islands are located in a similar place on the wider world map, and they're basically the adventure after your main adventure in the Kanto region, so I'm guessing they're gonna have to do. Pikachu doesn't have many battles in the Orange Islands, but he does have himself a few wins. He beats Team Rocket's Arbok, Weezing, and Lickitung in Season 2, Episode 34, which would be similar levels to that of the Rocket Grunts that you find in the warehouse on Island 5. There's a wild Rhydon and Jesse's Arbok a second time in Season 2, Episode 48, and a gym leader's Marowak and Alakazam in Season 2, Episode 52, which I based off the Trainer Tower on Island 7. To finish it off, Ash challenges the champion of the Orange League, whose levels I was able to calculate from the Fire Red and Leaf Green League champion Rival Blue, when you challenge him to a rematch after beating the Sevi Islands, making them all about level 73. Pikachu crushes it, beating both his Ditto and Dragonite in Season 2, Episode 55 and 56. Ash actually wins this battle entirely and enters the Orange Island Hall of Fame, which, strangely enough, nobody ever seems to acknowledge. The show talks all about how the Orange League has trainers that are
Whole lot tougher.
and even though Ash wins, no one ever seems to remember it. Even in blogs outside of the show, he only got attention when he finally won the Alola League. Like, oh my gosh, Ash actually won something for a change. He won back in Season 2, guys. I mean, what does a guy got to do to get some recognition around here? Your time will come, Ash. Your time will come. But before that, we got 3 more regions to plow through. At the end of the Orange Islands, Pikachu has amassed 35 levels. Wait, really? Is that that it? How are you taking down Pokemon that are twice as powerful? At this point, you might think that my pursuit's been wasted, as by my own logic, Pikachu shouldn't have been able to win those fights, but I'm not gonna let anime logic get in the way of my cold, hard calculations. That is, empirically speaking, what level he should be at based on all the fights he's done at this point in the series. So, we're carrying onward to the Johto arc, which brings around a shift in the way that the anime works. The first 2 seasons had 2 regions and 2 leagues, but in Johto we actually have 3 seasons just to complete that 1 league, meaning that there are way more battles per region along the way. So you would think that this is where Pikachu's level would start to climb faster, but there are 2 problems. First, Pikachu takes a bit of a back seat during the Johto arc to let Ash's shiny new Pokemon take the spotlight. Secondly, the start of a new canon region also means an interesting twist with regards to the game mechanics. The Pokemon levels within the region reset. Although at this point Pikachu is at level 35, the Pokemon in the early routes will be very low-level Pokemon, as you'd expect when you start a new game. The anime does make a point of this when Ash first arrives, showing that he's too overpowered, hence Pikachu taking a back seat and us saying goodbye to characters like Charizard and Squirtle early on. Now, instead of me just rattling off a bunch of battles, I'm gonna show you the list here. You can trust me, I watched them all. Some noteworthy things worth mentioning: episode 41, Ash runs into the other Team Rocket, Cassidy and Biff.
The name is Butch. Can't you get anything right?
Sorry, Butch. So for these guys, I decided to take the grunts from the radio tower because it's the same city of Goldenrod, but also there's a striking resemblance between Cassidy and the female rocket grunt. Next, Pikachu has a run-in with Whitney's famous Miltank in Season 4, Episode 1, which he does defeat upon second try, much like I did back in the day. Stupid Miltank and your stupid rollout. But the big headache in calculations came from our old friends, the original Team Rocket. In Episode 33 of Season 4, Pikachu defeats Jesse's Arbok, and in Episode 24 of Season 5, he defeats James's Weezing. This is where the problems begin. See, these Pokemon are from the very first region, meaning that they must have grown since we last beat them on the Orange Islands at level 49. However, because of the region reset, we can't take our usual levels from the surrounding trainers, as suddenly they'd be back to like level 20, which just isn't possible. So I had to make an educated guess as to what level they'd be. Assuming they're growing at a similar rate to Pikachu, I'd put them down as Arbok being level 55 and Weezing being level 60 at the time of their respective battles. But if you don't agree with that methodology, it doesn't matter in the long run, which you'll see later. As I mentioned, Pikachu was used a lot less in this region, only 21 winning battles, the same as Kanto, but spread out over 3 seasons. This gives Pikachu a current level of 40, only 5 levels more since we last left off in the Orange Islands. But at least now he's at a point where taking on Pokemon League opponents is at least a little bit more believable. And with that, it's time for a break. Seriously, this script is massive, and we're only halfway through all the episodes that I gotta cover. Plus, there's some really interesting problems that you and I have to talk about when it comes to the upcoming seasons, like proving whether or not Pikachu's level gets reset from the events in the series, and weird calculation quirks like the Battle Frontier. Trust me, I wanted to make this one episode. I tried to thin this down to fit into one episode, but there's just so much that I have to cover to get to this answer. It's actually a really hard topic. And hey, I watched 600 episodes and 13 movies to learn the answer to this one. All you have to do is watch 2 of our episodes to get it. So at least in my opinion, fair trade. Tune in next time as we reach our final answer. What is Pikachu's true level? In the meantime, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
All right, finally! I can't wait to hit the high seas! Ha! Yeah! I'm king of the world!
Whoa there, son. First time surfing, eh? Might want to be careful out here. Don't want you and your Pokemon to get hurt.
Yes, sir! Say, do you think Geico, our sponsor for today's episode,
What?
might be able to help? They can save people money on insurance for their cars, homes, motorcycles, boats, and more. Maybe my Pokemon falls under and more.
Something tells me they're not going to be able to offer you Sharpedo insurance.
What about my Pidgey? He flies me wherever I want to go.
You do realize that using Pokemon as vehicles is horrifically unsafe, right?
Come to think of it, Geico offers 24/7 access to licensed agents who can help. Me meaning there's one available to talk to me right now. I should call them.
Wow, you certainly know a lot about the quality services that Geico has to offer. But here, let's not waste their time. I know someone whose time we can waste.
Hello, this is Game Theorists, ruining your childhood since 2011.
We've got a code 720-A.
Person believing that Pokemon are a safe and reliable mode of transportation? Copy that. Roll intro! Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show where you just gotta catch 'em all. All the episodes, that is. How else are you gonna stay on top of FNAF lore? Or the science of Mario? Or whatever insanity the Dream SMP has going on this week? So, one of the longest running discussions in the Pokemon franchise is with the move Fly. I mean, if YouTube had somehow existed back in 1999, I'd probably be doing a Gen 1 theory trying to come up with some ridiculous explanation for how Doduo can use Fly despite the fact that it has no wings. Come to think of it, how Doduo can fly. And of course, even for Pokemon that do have wings, there's still the utter absurdity of a tiny Pidgey being able to carry an 11-year-old kid around. Yeah, that deserves mentioning. Red's canonical age in the games is 11, according to the official game manual. Contrary to the anime saying that Ash is age 10. I don't know why they made it a difference. Anyway, an average 11-year-old kid is 81 pounds or 37 kilograms, which means that poor little Pidgey at 4 pounds or 1.8 kilograms has to carry over 20 times his own body weight. Ain't gonna happen. So to solve this logical inconsistency, and to prevent players from having to waste party and move slots on HMs, thank Arceus, recent generations have moved away from the old model of using HMs to teach your Pokemon to fly, surf, or rock smash their way through the world, and replace them with Poke Rides, where Pokemon outside of your party function as rentable service vehicles able to be summoned when you need them. Kinda like the Pokemon world's equivalent of hiring an Uber. A Woober, I guess? In the case of flying, it started with the Charizard service, but in the latest gen, Sword and Shield, the entire region is covered by a flying taxi service of giant Corviknights who'll carry you around in a cab like the world's scariest cable car. But does the world building here really hold up? Sure, a giant armored bird hauling you around makes a lot more sense than a 4-pound Pidgey, but would it actually work? I mean, this thing is holding up multiple people. We're shown both in the games and in the anime's Twilight Wings miniseries that the Sky Taxi has both a passenger and a human cabbie. And besides that, in the game we know that flying taxicab driver is a profession from the existence of the cabbie trainers who fittingly use all flying Pokemon. So could a Corviknight, based on the physical characteristics we know about it, actually carry that much weight? Or are we better sticking with our Charizard mounts like they do over in Alola? Probably the best way to start getting a handle on how much weight a bird can carry is to look at examples. In the real world, the record for weight carrying capacity is held by a bald eagle that managed to lift a deer that weighed 15 pounds, or 6.8 kilograms. Bird of prey? More like bird of prey that he doesn't see ya. You may have also seen videos of eagles trying to snatch up human kids, like a wedge-tailed eagle who became the subject of a viral photo when, according to the park, the eagle, quote, made contact with an audience member. Yep, sinking your 2-inch talons into a small child and calling it making contact. That, my friends, is what you call some PR spin. There was even a New York Times story about an eagle who tried to carry off a Scottish baby from its mother. This was back in 1926. Apparently, eagle snatching was just a lot more common back in the day. But all of that being said, a 15-pound deer lift may be impressive for a bird the size of an eagle, but it's a far cry from carrying around an 80-pound raspy-voiced preteen. The eagle has an impressive wingspan of 6.6 feet or 2 meters, and at 3 foot tall, 0.9 meters, roughly the size of a toddler, the eagle is certainly a massive bird. However, it is teeny when you compare it to the massive Corviknight, which is reportedly 7 foot 3 inches tall, 2.2 meters, over double the size. But size is only one factor here. What I really want to know is what I call the ant ratio. You know that piece of knowledge that everyone seems to have, that ants are really small but can carry anywhere between 50 and 5,000 times their own body weight? Well, we want to know which birds are capable of doing similar feats. And when you look at it this way, the great horned owl is the winner, able to lift around twice its own weight. That's a bird with a 4.1 foot or 1.25 meter wingspan and weighing in at 5.5 pounds, 2.5 kilos, kilos, able to carry about 11 pounds or 5 kilos. So again, double its own weight. Looking at data from these and other birds, there seems to be a rough correlation that for every 1 foot of wingspan, a bird can carry around 4 pounds, including both the load it's carrying plus its own body weight. Or if you use the much cooler metric system, it winds up being a ratio of 6 kg per meter of wing. But that doesn't quite tell us the full story, because remember, birds generate lift by flapping their wings. Ergo, the larger the area of your wings, the more lift you generate. And if you double the length of a wing, you're probably also increasing its width as well. Remember, basic geometry tells us that if you double the dimensions of a square, you're actually quadrupling its area. What this tells us is that if Corviknight is 2.4 times the height and wingspan of a bald eagle, its wings aren't just 2.4 times as big, they're actually 5.76 times as big, and therefore capable of lifting 5.76 times as much weight. This means that if an eagle is capable of lifting 29 pounds, picking up a 15-pound deer plus its own body mass of 14 pounds, then a Corviknight should be able to lift a mass of, drumroll please, 167 pounds, 75.75 kilos, which is a lot, until you consider that the flying taxi service is expected to lift a giant metal car along with 2 human-sized passengers. And that's without even factoring in Corviknight's own weight. According to the Pokedex,
Corviknight, the black luster of its steel body could drive terror into the heart of any foe.
it has a steel body, which makes it one super thick bird. 165.3 pounds, or 75 kilograms thick, meaning that it can carry a mere 1.7 pounds extra before the payload gets too heavy for Corviknight's wings to carry. Forget carrying a Pokemon trainer, this thing can barely lift a football. But I can already hear you saying, Matt Pat, how can that be right? If an owl can carry an object that's twice its body mass, and an eagle can pick up an object that's nearly equal to its body mass, then why can't Corviknight do the same thing? Well, loyal theorists, it all comes down to one of my favorite scientific principles, the square cube law. This is something that you might be familiar with if you watched my Ant-Man video over on Film Theory, where I explained that bigger isn't always better, and why he seems so clumsy when he blows himself up to be over 60 feet tall. I also mentioned it very briefly during my Godzilla vs. Kong episode a few weeks back, but here's the quick explanation. Earlier, we established that when you double the size of an object along a single dimension, you actually get quadruple the area. A 1 by 1 inch square increased to a 2 by 2 inch square will have an area of 4 square inches. However, while the area increases as the square of the length, the mass increases as the cube of the length, which is to say, a 1 by 1 by 1 inch cube increased to a 2 by 2 by 2 inch cube will suddenly have 8 times the volume and therefore 8 times the mass. What this means is that if you take a bird and double its wingspan, you're increasing the area of its wings and the weight that it can carry by a factor of 4, but you're also increasing the bird's weight by a factor of 8. The bigger the wings are, the more musculature the bird needs to be able to flap those wings, and the weight of the bird's own muscles increases faster than the weight the wings are able to carry, which is exactly what we're seeing happening with Corviknight, with a weight that is just at what it should be able to carry. So well done, Game Freak, on keeping scientifically accurate with your Pokemon, but also shame on you, Game Freak, for not keeping scientifically accurate with your Pokemon world. By the way, this also explains some basic facts about nature, like the reason why most birds are small, and why the heaviest flying birds on Earth, the Kori bustard of Africa, weighs in at only 40 pounds, 18 kilograms. If birds get too big and massive, their bodies literally can't support their own weight due to basic laws of physics. And you see, that's the real twist here. This video isn't so much about which Pokemon can and can't be flying taxis, it's more about which Pokemon can and can't actually fly. Corviknight is actually one of the few flying Pokemon that would actually be able to fly based on its Pokedex stats. Let's compare with our other flying taxi service Pokemon, Charizard. Using everything that we just covered, Charizard's wings should be able to support a weight of 103.5 pounds, or 46.9 kilos. And what's his weight in the Pokedex? Nearly double that. Almost 200 pounds. Forget giving people rides around Alola, Charizard shouldn't even be able to take off for itself. In fact, what we've discovered here isn't just a problem with the Sky Taxi service, it's a problem with flying Pokemon in general. Flying Pokemon are much more accurately classified as ground Pokemon, or should I say grounded needed Pokemon, all thanks to the square cube law. So once we saw this, we went through the weight and size data for every single flying Pokemon in the Pokedex. Based on that, I've compiled a list of flying Pokemon that, scientifically speaking, should never be able to get their talons off the ground. Note here that I'm only including Pokemon that have wings. I'm not including Pokemon that just seem to mysteriously levitate or fly through the air like Gyarados and Rayquaza, which presumably have their own non-wing way of keeping themselves in the air. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you your non-flyable flyers. Skarmory, Aerodactyl, Tropius, Charizard, Salamence, Dragonite, Togekiss, Hoot, Tornadus' Therian form, Ho-Oh, and Lugia. And by the way, the Mega Forms also apply here. In other words, 1/10 of the game's flying Pokemon can't physically fly. Maybe there's some in-universe explanation for why some of these Pokemon can fly, despite the fact that scientifically speaking, their wings shouldn't be able to support their own weight. Maybe legendary Pokemon like Ho-Oh and Lugia have ways of controlling air currents. Maybe Charizard can do something where he heats the air around it to create convection currents. Maybe dragons and fairies have mysterious air-controlling powers. Or maybe I'm just making excuses for Game Freak at this point. Go figure, rock and steel types aren't the best candidates for creatures that are expected to fly. Also, while most of these examples go toward my point that flying is a lot harder as you grow more massive, the weirdest example on the list has to be Hoot. I normally think of Hoot as being a pretty small bird Pokemon, and in terms of physical size it is, a mere 2 foot 4 inches tall, or 71 centimeters, but apparently it weighs 46.7 pounds, 21.2 kilos. For comparison, a human toddler of that height would only weigh about 21 pounds, 9.8 kilos. I mean, what's up, Hoot? You been pounding down one too many Chipotle burritos? Sorry, little bud, those tiny little wings of yours just aren't enough to handle your incredible girth. So how could we possibly fix Pokemon's transportation problem? Well, if you really wanted to create a Pokemon taxi service, paradoxically, the solution isn't to go bigger, it's actually to go smaller. As we noted, one of the birds renowned for carrying multiples of its own body weight, the horned owl, is actually quite small. So the answer seems to lie in looking at the smallest and lightest flying Pokemon. The humble Pidgey, based on its wingspan, should be able to carry a weight of 7 pounds, which is actually 3 pounds greater than its own weight of 4. In fact, if you look at the Pokemon in the category I like to call the Pidgey clones, the tiny little bird Pokemon that always seem to appear early game, Tailo, Starly, Pidove, Fetchling, Rookidee, the one that actually stands out here more than all the others is Fetchling, which, like most of the other Pidgey clones, is 1 foot tall, but weighs in at just 2.6 pounds. That means that in addition to its own weight, Fetchling can carry an additional capacity of 4.4 pounds. Obviously, that's not enough to lift a person, but if you get a flock of 100 Fetchlings, each with their own little harnesses, suddenly you've got yourself a carrying capacity of 440 pounds, which is now approaching territory where you'd actually be able to transport a small sky vehicle and some human occupants. Or you could just recreate this iconic scene from Hey Arnold.
Always wash your berries before you eat them, and fly toward the sun.
And if that sounds like more work than just having a single giant flying Pokemon, well, you're not wrong. Maybe the Pokemon universe should finally bite the bullet and, just invest in more airplanes. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. And hey, while understanding the mechanics of Pokemon travel may be difficult, switching to Geico, our sponsor for today's episode for your insurance, is easy. Question: what makes Game Freak and Geico similar? Well, they're both reliable. Game Freak has been pumping out Pokemon games for the past 25 years, and Geico has been saving people money on their insurance for over 75. And that's why I'm proud to have Geico on this channel. Not only are they a service that I personally use for all our car insurance needs, and who has delivered excellent service to me for years, but they've shown that they care about us and what we do here, that we all matter, and that's nice. So to show them some love back and see how much money they could save you, click the link down in the description below. And in the meantime, I'll see you all next week.
Will I ever be good enough? I wish I looked like Taylor. Nothing looks good on me. I look ugly. Life can be confusing. Like, no one understands the struggle. But there is hope. Find calm in the chaos at your local youth wellness hub.
Well, Mapet's getting ready for his big flex. I trained Pokemon in years past. Now look in Oz, I show you my Pokedex. Read it and weep, my Pokemon are shiny. A red Pika and a yellow Piloswine. It's divine, you know they're all shiny. I've got rare colors coming out my wazoo. It's very true, don't you know? I went and caught them all with my different types of Pokeballs. Watch them shimmer, my Pokemon are shiny. Internet, welcome to Game Theory. Today we're going to talk about how all your shiny Pokemon are doomed to die. If you're not already familiar, shiny Pokemon are the rare variants of your favorite cuddly pocket monsters that have a different color palette than the other members of their species. Black Charizards, blue Ponytas, golden Magikarps, cause let's be honest, anything to make this useless fish even remotely cool is a welcome change. But catching these guys comes with, well, a catch. Finding shinies has truly amped up the difficulty of catching them all, considering their appearance rates have been reported to anywhere between 1 in 500 to 1 in 8,192. When I say that these guys are rare, I mean they are rare. Now, it's tempting to just write this off as yet another way to make Pokemon sticky for the player, give them more things to chase, more rare things that'll deliver a satisfying shot of dopamine into the brain, yet another badge of honor that you can lord over all your Pokepals, and most importantly of all, more things to love and cuddle and buy as merch at your local Spencer's Gifts. But here's the thing, friends, shiny Pokemon are real. Or to put it more correctly, this is actually a place where Pokemon mirrors real-world biology. Throughout the animal kingdom, there are real-world shinies, rare cases of animal appearing in unusual colors. And to understand why your favorite shiny is doomed to die a tragic death, well, we have to look into the science of what's really going on. When it comes to real-world shiny animals, you're probably familiar with some of the more common examples, like the black sheep.
Oh, Diane, we're two misunderstood souls. Everyone else is a phony.
But while you probably already knew that your dark-colored shiny Wooloo was based in reality, some others are so rare that not even the Pokemon fandom pages have made the connection. For instance, did you know that Clauncher is probably most directly inspired by the blue lobster, an animal so rare that it has about a 1 in 4 million chance of appearing? Makes the game's 1 in 8,000 chance for a shiny encounter seem pretty good. A little less dramatic than the blue lobster are mammals like the black-backed jackal, which normally looks like this. Note the black-colored fur on its back, but there are shiny variants that look like this, with a reddish-colored fur. Same thing with giant pandas. Where you'd normally expect them to look black and white, there is one panda in known existence that was born with reddish or brownish fur. And similarly, you got badgers, who are most commonly black, but very rarely you'll see one with reddish-brown fur. Of course, it's not just seafood and mammals that'll show up with unusual pigmentation either. Take, for instance, the ball python, which normally looks brown and black, but occasionally appears with white skin covering most of its body. A rare variant that, like a shiny Pokemon, is highly sought after by collectors. Which brings us back to our original question. What is it that makes these animals appear in unusual colors, and why are they so rare? Well, it all comes down to genetics.